Breathe. Yes, like that. Slowly. Deeply. Without haste. Now listen, not with your mind, but with your heart. This is not just any audiobook. You're not here to learn something new. You are here to remember what you already know. For the next few hours, we'll be walking along an ancient path. A path made of silence, of stories that are not explained, and of teachings that do not seek to convince, but to awaken. This is a journey without a destination, but full of discoveries. A journey to the most intimate, the simplest, the most real. Close your eyes if you can. Leave the weight of your day behind. Forget the clock, the duty, the effort. There are no goals here. There is no effort here. Just be. Just listen. Just breathe. Because Zen is not found in sacred books or golden temples. It is found in the sound of the wind, in a cup of tea, in the moment when you stop resisting and simply are. This audiobook is full of stories. Stories that seem simple, but have been awakening hearts for centuries. You'll also hear teachings from the Buddha, gentle meditations, and reflections that aren't meant to explain the world to you, but rather to invite you to see it through new eyes. And you don't need to do anything. Just let yourself be carried away by the voice, by the silence. For that deep stillness that has always been within you. There is nothing to achieve. There is nothing to understand. You've come to the right place. You are right where you need to be. And even if you don't know it yet, you are about to go home. Get ready to enter the spirit of Zen. The journey begins now. Chapter 1. The Spirit of Zen, a door without words. Listen. Before you begin, if you can, close your eyes. Now, take a deep breath. Once again, but slower. Feel the air coming in, the air going out. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to go anywhere. You're already here. And here the journey begins. They say Zen can't be explained. That it can't be taught with words. That trying to understand it with your mind is like trying to catch the wind with your hands. And yet, here we are, you and I, trying to cross together this formless door, this wordless door, this door invisible to the eyes and palpable only to the heart. What is Zen? Many have asked this question for centuries. Some say it's a branch of Buddhism. Others, that it's a philosophy of life. But Zen, true Zen, is something deeper. It is a whisper hidden in silence. It is a living presence in every moment. It's a way of looking at the world without giving anything a name. It's not about learning something new. It's about unlearning everything that prevents us from seeing. Imagine you've lived your entire life in a closed room, filled with books that explain the world, filled with opinions, rules, ideas, theories. And one day, you simply decide to open the window. And there are no words at that moment. Only air. Only light. Only the song of a bird in the distance. And for the first time, you see. That's Zen. Not what is said. Not what is thought. But what is, when thought ceases. It is said that one day, more than 1,000 years ago, the Buddha stood before a large crowd. He said nothing. He simply held up a flower. Nobody understood. Nobody knew what to do. Everyone was waiting for a lesson. A speech. An explanation. All but one. Mahakashyapa, his most silent disciple, smiled. In that instant, without a single word, the Buddha transmitted the spirit of Zen to him. A lineage was born there. Not based on books. Not based on ideas, but on living presence. In what is shared in silence. In what is understood effortlessly. Zen is not learned, it is remembered. Because you already know. You've already experienced it. That moment when you stop in front of a sunset and something inside you falls silent. That moment when you see a child sleeping and everything goes quiet inside. When you listen to the rain without thinking about anything. That moment is Zen. But then, why do we seek? Why do we study, read, meditate, practice? Because we have forgotten. We forget that we are already what we seek. And Zen doesn't give you anything. It just helps you let go. Release tension, release ideas, release the self. You don't need to become anything. You just need to stop trying to be something other than what you already are. The spirit of Zen is simple. So simple, that the mind complicates it. That's why Zen masters don't give you answers. They give you koans, paradoxes, illogical questions, impossible phrases. How are you doing? What is the sound of one hand clapping? This is. If you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. Is it literal? Of course not. But it is not as symbolic as you imagine. It is a finger pointing to a place that cannot be named. You don't have to understand with your mind. You just have to see. Let me tell you something. A young monk arrived at a temple, eager to achieve enlightenment. He approached the teacher and said, "Master, please show me the path to awakening." The teacher looked at him and answered, "Have you eaten today?" "Yes, Master," the young man replied, bewildered. "Then go wash your bowl." That was the whole lesson. There is nothing to seek beyond the present act. Wash your bowl. Feel the water. Listen to the sound. Be one with it. That is awakening. In Zen there is no God to worship, nor a heaven to reach. There is only this. This moment. And the question is, are you here? Because if you are completely here, with your breathing, with the sound of my voice, with your body relaxed, then you are already practicing Zen. The spirit of Zen does not dwell in books or temples. It dwells in the moment when you stop resisting what is. When you stop fighting with life, and just live it. Many seek Zen to find peace, to calm the mind, to stop suffering. But Zen doesn't promise you anything. It doesn't offer you security. It only offers you the truth. And the truth is not always comfortable. Sometimes, it's naked. It's silent. It's radical. Because it shows you that you are not who you think you are. That you are not your thoughts, nor your emotions, nor your personal history. You are the space where all that happens. You are the sky. Not the clouds that pass through it. Breathe. Yes, again. Don't underestimate the power of conscious breathing. You're not here to accumulate knowledge. You're here to remember who you are without all the layers. Zen is not a practice separate from life. It is life itself lived with open eyes. It is walking barefoot feeling the ground. It's taking a sip of tea and feeling its warmth. It is looking someone in the eyes without the need for words. In Japan, there is a Zen saying that goes, "Before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water." Nothing changes. And yet, everything changes. Because now, you are present. I want you to hear these words not with your mind, but with your body. Let each phrase resonate in your chest. Feel the rhythm. The cadence. The space between each idea. Sometimes the silence between words says more than the words themselves. And when you finish this chapter, don't take any theories with you. Take a seed. A seed of presence. A seed of silence. And every time you feel lost, come back. Return to the body. Return to the breath. Come back instantly. There. Zen always awaits you. There is nothing to achieve. You just have to stop searching. And see. Breathe. Yes, like that, slowly, deeply, without haste. Now listen, not with your mind, but with your heart. This is not just any audiobook. You're not here to learn something new. You are here to remember what you already know. For the next few hours, we'll be walking along an ancient path. A path made of silence, of stories that are not explained, and of teachings that do not seek to convince, but to awaken. This is a journey without a destination, but full of discoveries. A journey to the most intimate, the simplest, the most real. Close your eyes if you can. Leave the weight of your day behind. Forget the clock, the duty, the effort. There are no goals here. There is no effort here. Just be. Just listen. Just breathe. Because Zen is not found in sacred books or golden temples. It is found in the sound of the wind, in a cup of tea, in the moment when you stop resisting and simply are. This audiobook is full of stories. Stories that seem simple, but have been awakening hearts for centuries. You'll also hear teachings from the Buddha, gentle meditations, and reflections that aren't meant to explain the world to you, but rather to invite you to see it through new eyes. And you don't need to do anything. Just let yourself be carried away by the voice, by the silence. For that deep stillness that has always been within you. There is nothing to achieve. There is nothing to understand. You've come to the right place. You are right where you need to be. And even if you don't know it yet, you are about to go home. Get ready to enter the spirit of Zen. The journey begins now. Chapter 1. The Spirit of Zen, a door without words. Listen. Before you begin, if you can, close your eyes. Now, take a deep breath. Once again, but slower. Feel the air coming in, the air going out. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to go anywhere. You're already here. And here the journey begins. They say Zen can't be explained. That it can't be taught with words. That trying to understand it with your mind is like trying to catch the wind with your hands. And yet, here we are, you and I, trying to cross together this formless door, this wordless door, this door invisible to the eyes and palpable only to the heart. What is Zen? Many have asked this question for centuries. Some say it's a branch of Buddhism. Others, that it's a philosophy of life. But Zen, true Zen, is something deeper. It is a whisper hidden in silence. It is a living presence in every moment. It's a way of looking at the world without giving anything a name. It's not about learning something new. It's about unlearning everything that prevents us from seeing. Imagine you've lived your entire life in a closed room, filled with books that explain the world, filled with opinions, rules, ideas, theories. And one day, you simply decide to open the window. And there are no words at that moment. Only air. Only light. Only the song of a bird in the distance. And for the first time, you see. That's Zen. Not what is said. Not what is thought. But what is, when thought ceases. It is said that one day, More than 1,000 years ago, the Buddha stood before a large crowd. He said nothing. He simply held up a flower. Nobody understood. Nobody knew what to do. Everyone was waiting for a lesson. A speech. An explanation. All but one. Mahakashyapa, his most silent disciple, smiled. In that instant, without a single word, the Buddha transmitted the spirit of Zen to him. A lineage was born there. Not based on books. Not based on ideas. But on living presence. In what is shared in silence. In what is understood effortlessly. Zen is not learned, it is remembered. Because you already know. You've already experienced it. That moment when you stop in front of a sunset and something inside you falls silent. That moment when you see a child sleeping and everything goes quiet inside. When you listen to the rain without thinking about anything. That moment is Zen. But then, why do we seek? Why do we study, read, meditate, practice? Because we have forgotten. We forget that we are already what we seek. And Zen doesn't give you anything. It just helps you let go. Release tension, release ideas, release the self. You don't need to become anything. You just need to stop trying to be something other than what you already are. The spirit of Zen is simple. So simple, that the mind complicates it. That's why Zen masters don't give you answers. They give you koans, paradoxes, illogical questions, impossible phrases. How are you doing? What is the sound of one hand clapping? This is. If you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. Is it literal? Of course not. But it is not as symbolic as you imagine. It is a finger pointing to a place that cannot be named. You don't have to understand with your mind. You just have to see. Let me tell you something. A young monk arrived at a temple, eager to achieve enlightenment. He approached the teacher and said, "Master, please show me the path to awakening." The teacher looked at him and answered, "Have you eaten today?" "Yes, Master," the young man replied, bewildered. "Then go wash your bowl." That was the whole lesson. There is nothing to seek beyond the present act. Wash your bowl. Feel the water. Listen to the sound. Be one with it. That is awakening. In Zen there is no God to worship, nor a heaven to reach. There is only this. This moment. And the question is, are you here? Because if you are completely here, with your breathing, with the sound of my voice, with your body relaxed, then you are already practicing Zen. The spirit of Zen does not dwell in books or temples. It dwells in the moment when you stop resisting what is. When you stop fighting with life, and just live it. Many seek Zen to find peace, to calm the mind, to stop suffering. But Zen doesn't promise you anything. It doesn't offer you security. It only offers you the truth. And the truth is not always comfortable. Sometimes, it's naked. It's silent. It's radical. Because it shows you that you are not who you think you are. That you are not your thoughts, nor your emotions, nor your personal history. You are the space where all that happens. You are the sky. Not the clouds that pass through it. Breathe. Yes, again. Don't underestimate the power of conscious breathing. You're not here to accumulate knowledge. You're here to remember who you are without all the layers. Zen is not a practice separate from life. It is life itself lived with open eyes. It is walking barefoot feeling the ground. It's taking a sip of tea and feeling its warmth. It is looking someone in the eyes without the need for words. In Japan, there is a Zen saying that goes: before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. Nothing changes. And yet, everything changes. Because now, you are present. I want you to hear these words not with your mind, but with your body. Let each phrase resonate in your chest. Feel the rhythm, the cadence, the space between each idea. Sometimes the silence between words says more than the words themselves. And when you finish this chapter, don't take any theories with you. Take a seed of presence, a seed of silence. And every time you feel lost, come back. Return to the body. Return to the breath. Come back instantly. There. Zen always awaits you. There is nothing to achieve. You just have to stop searching. And see. Chapter 3. The Story of the Monk and the Scorpion, Unconditional Compassion. Throughout the centuries, spiritual masters have used many stories to convey profound truths without resorting to long discourses or complex explanations. In Zen, a single image can open the heart more than 1,000 theories. A single scene, when contemplated carefully, can become a mirror in which we recognize our fears, our resistances, our highest possibilities. One such story, seemingly simple but powerfully transformative, is that of the monk and the scorpion. A brief parable that, like a drop of pure water in the middle of the desert, contains within it the essence of what it means to live with compassion. The story goes like this: an old monk was walking along a dirt path beside a river, wrapped in his simple robes and with the serenity that characterizes those who have made presence their habitual abode. As he walked along, he heard a small commotion on the bank and, as he drew closer, saw a drowning scorpion. It was trapped in some branches, struggling for survival, about to be swept away by the current. The monk, without giving it much thought, bent down and reached out to rescue the small animal. In doing so, the scorpion, as expected, stung him. The pain was intense, but the monk didn't stop. Despite the wound, he tried again. Again and again, the scorpion stung him. Again and again, the monk kept trying to save it. A man watching from a distance, confused and annoyed, shouted at him, "Why do you keep doing that? Don't you understand that it's always going to sting you? It's its nature." The monk looked at him gently, without judgment, and replied, "Yes, I know. But just because he continues to act according to his nature doesn't mean I should abandon mine." And in that brief dialogue, in that scene so mundane and yet so symbolic, lies one of the most revolutionary teachings of the spiritual path: to act from compassion not as a reaction to the kindness of others, nor as a strategy to obtain something in return, but as a genuine expression of who we are. True compassion does not adapt to the behavior of others. It does not withdraw when the world responds with hostility. It does not disappear in the face of ingratitude. Because it is not a prize, nor a reward, nor a transaction. It is a manifestation of the awakened heart, a way of being in the world born from the profound understanding that all beings, even those who cause harm, are trapped in their own chains of ignorance, fear, and pain. When we hear this story, a mixture of admiration and skepticism may arise within us. Admiration for the monk's serenity, for his consistency, for his unwavering compassion. But also skepticism, because in our real world, pain exists, wounds hurt, and it's not always easy, nor does it seem logical, to continue helping those who harm us. Isn't it naive to continue offering a hand to those who constantly sting us? Wouldn't it be wiser to distance ourselves, to protect ourselves, to set limits? These questions are legitimate, and in fact, They are part of the process of understanding that Zen does not avoid, but rather embraces. Because the goal is not to become a martyr or encourage submission, but to discover where we act from, and whether our actions are born of fear or love, conditioning or inner freedom. The monk in the story wasn't naive. He knew perfectly well that the scorpion would sting him. But his choice wasn't based on the expectation of a different outcome. He didn't rescue the scorpion with the hope that it would change. He did so because, in his inner silence, he had already chosen to be compassionate beyond the reaction of others. And that is what challenges us profoundly, to live from internal coherence, not from the expectation of control or reward. Because if our goodness depends on the behavior of others, then it isn't freedom, it's a condition. If we only love those who love us, if we only help those who are grateful, if we only forgive those who apologize, then our compassion is nothing more than a social mask, a currency in the marketplace of human relationships. But if, instead, we choose to act from who we are, from what we have discovered within ourselves, then compassion becomes an unstoppable force, not because there is no pain, but because there is no fear. At this point, it's important to differentiate between compassion and passivity, between love and complacency. The monk wasn't a limitless being. He didn't allow himself to be hurt out of ignorance or weakness. He did so consciously, from a strength that only comes from clarity. Helping a scorpion out of the water doesn't mean putting it in your bed. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing abuse. Love doesn't mean approving of everything. But it does mean seeing beyond appearances, recognizing the suffering of others even when it manifests as aggression. Zen doesn't ask you to be a fool. It asks you to be free. And only those who don't act out of resentment, out of bitterness, out of a need for revenge or validation are free. Many of us carry wounds that haven't healed, and sometimes we believe that acting with compassion is denying them, minimizing what we suffer. But in reality, true compassion is born precisely when we have touched our own shadows with love. When we have understood that the one who hurts, often, is someone who has been hurt. That behind every act of cruelty is an untold story, an unheard pain, an unprotected childhood. That doesn't excuse the acts, but it does explain them. And when we understand this, not from theory, but from the heart, then our response ceases to be an automatic reaction and becomes a conscious choice. We don't act because the other deserves it, but because we have chosen to be light, even in the darkness. Zen reminds us, again and again, that we can't control what the world does, but we can decide how we respond. And that decision is what forges our true freedom. Being compassionate doesn't mean allowing ourselves to be trampled on, but rather acting from an inner center that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's a practice, yes, and it's not always easy. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's difficult. But it's also liberating. Because when we stop living defensively, when we no longer react out of fear, when we no longer need to punish or impose, then we find a peace that cannot be taken away. That peace doesn't come from everything being perfect outside, but from having put our inner house in order. And from that order, everything else becomes clearer. Think of someone who has hurt you. Maybe it's not a literal scorpion, but someone whose words or actions caused you pain. Maybe you feel like this person doesn't deserve your compassion. And it's natural to feel that way. But now imagine that you can see their whole story. Their lonely nights, their hidden traumas, their childhood fears, their internal struggle. Would that change anything in your heart? Maybe it would. Because when we see the pain behind the pain, judgment dissolves. And that doesn't mean you approve of what they did. It just means you choose not to contaminate your soul with hatred. That you choose to act from your nature, not from the wound. Like the monk who, despite the sting, still reached out. Not because the scorpion deserved it, but because he had chosen to be who he was. Unconditional compassion is not weakness. It is spiritual power. It is the gentle fire that transforms without destroying. It is the seed that, when planted, blossoms even in the most arid soil. In a world where knee-jerk reaction is the norm, where violence breeds more violence, where resentment masquerades as justice, choosing compassion is an act of profound rebellion. And not a rebellion against the world, but against ignorance. That is to say, I will not follow the pattern. I will not respond with hatred. I will not harden my heart because the world asks me to. And in doing that, we create a new possibility. A new way of living. A new way of loving. Just as the scorpion couldn't help but sting, many people around us act from their conditioned nature. But we can choose to act from a different consciousness. It's not about changing others, but about not being dragged down by their darkness. About keeping our light burning, even when the wind blows. About keeping our soul open, even when the world closes its doors. About not forgetting that, beneath all layers, all beings seek the same thing: peace, love, meaning. And if we have already touched that place within ourselves, then we have the privilege, and the responsibility, to act from there. The scorpion monk isn't a character from the past. He's a living image inside you. He's that part of you that knows, even when it hurts, that love is stronger than fear. He's that inner voice that tells you that you can choose to be you, regardless of what others do. He's that silent presence that reminds you that being compassionate isn't a weakness, but your greatest strength. Because when you choose to be compassionate, you're saying, I'm not going to become what hurt me. I'm going to be the medicine. I'm going to be the peace. Chapter 4. Mindfulness, living without haste, breathing with meaning. In the whirlwind of our modern lives, haste seems to be the inevitable constant. We wake up to the urgent sound of the alarm clock, and from the very first moment we begin racing against time, getting ready, leaving, getting to work, completing tasks, solving problems, responding to 1,000 stimuli, and yet always feeling like there isn't enough time left in the day to do what truly matters. We live in a world that seems to celebrate speed, multitasking, and productivity, but in the midst of this race, something essential is lost: the art of living mindfully, the ability to be here, in this moment, with true presence, without distractions or urgency. Mindfulness, or mindfulness, as it has become popular in recent years, is not a passing fad or just another stress management technique. It is, in fact, a way of life rooted in the most ancient Buddhist teachings. At the heart of Zen, the practice of mindfulness is a path to awakening from the illusion of fragmented time, a scattered mind, and the autopilot that drives us unconsciously toward an uncertain destination. It is learning to breathe meaningfully, to observe without judgment, to simply be, without the constant pressure to do or achieve. When we practice mindfulness, we begin with something seemingly simple, yet profoundly revolutionary: paying attention. Not to what comes next, nor to what happened before, but to what is happening now. The breath that comes in and out, the contact of our feet with the earth, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the feel of the air on our skin. Small, sometimes imperceptible moments that take on a new dimension because we welcome them with our full presence. In doing so, we discover that life is not a race toward a future point, but a delicate dance that occurs in every moment. This act of mindfulness changes the way we experience the world. Worries that seemed overwhelming become manageable, frantic thoughts calm, mental noise diminishes, and a space of calm opens within us. Breathing, which we often take for granted, becomes an anchor that sustains us and reminds us that we are alive, that we can choose where to focus our attention, that the now is the only real moment. Breathing meaningfully means not only moving air in and out of the lungs, but doing so with awareness, with intention, connecting with life itself. In this practice, haste loses its power. Not because the external world stops moving quickly, but because we stop being dragged along by that frenetic pace. We learn to create conscious pauses, moments in which we do nothing but be present. In these spaces, the mind doesn't race, the heart doesn't race, and anxiety loses ground. It's as if, for a moment, we can suspend time and breathe in a dimension where peace is possible. This doesn't mean renouncing responsibilities or movement, but rather approaching them from a different place, where presence is the foundation. Zen invites us to live each daily act with mindfulness. Eating, walking, washing dishes, listening to someone, even the most repetitive task can become an opportunity to cultivate presence. By focusing our attention on the action we are performing, we stop doing things mechanically and begin to experience them fully. Eating is not just filling the stomach, but savoring each bite with all the senses. Walking is not just moving from one place to another, but feeling the contact of our feet with the ground, the movement of our legs, the rhythm of our breathing. Every moment is a door to life when we enter it with mindfulness. This shift in perspective has a profound effect on our mental and emotional health. Modern studies have shown that regular mindfulness practice reduces stress, improves concentration, decreases anxiety, and fosters greater emotional stability. But beyond the scientific benefits lies the direct experience of a mind that isn't lost in worries or distractions, but rather anchored in the present reality. In that reality that, as simple as it may seem, is the only one we truly have. However, mindfulness isn't something that can be forced or demanded. It's not an achievement or a goal, but a constant cultivation. Sometimes the mind wanders, thoughts invade the field of awareness, emotions disturb the calm. This is natural and part of the process. The practice involves gently recognizing when attention has wandered and, without judgment or frustration, gently bringing it back to the present. This attitude of compassionate acceptance toward ourselves is fundamental. It's not about being perfect, but about being present with who we are in each moment. Breathing with meaning is, therefore, an invitation to a kinder internal dialogue. Instead of anxiously rushing into the future or remaining stuck in the past, Zen reminds us that life happens here and now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this sensation. Each inhalation and exhalation is a reminder that we are alive and that we can choose how to live. We can decide to stop running away and begin to fully inhabit our body and mind. We can stop and listen to the silence between sounds, the pause that sustains movement, the space where calm is born. Imagine for a moment that your life becomes a succession of conscious moments, rather than an endless chain of automatic actions. That upon waking, you don't immediately launch into your to-do list, but instead allow the daylight to slowly enter, your body to gently awaken, your breathing to establish a slow and serene rhythm. That during your activities, you can pause for a moment to feel the texture of objects, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the scent of the air. That in your relationships, you can be truly present, without distractions or parallel thoughts, listening with full attention. This way of living is possible, and it is a gateway to a fuller and more authentic existence. In Zen practice, the act of sitting in meditation is the ultimate expression of mindfulness. In the stillness of the zafu, with a straight back and deep breathing, the meditator observes the flow of their thoughts, emotions, and sensations, without identifying with them or being swept away. It's as if it were a passing river, a dissolving cloud. In this serene observation, a deeper understanding unfolds, that we are not our thoughts, that we are not our emotions, that the observing essence is a vast, tranquil space where everything happens without clinging or rejecting. That same essence can be cultivated in every moment of life, not just on the meditation cushion. Breathing meaningfully also involves recognizing the interconnectedness of all things. Breathing is not an isolated act, but part of the natural cycle of life. When we inhale, we receive the air that other beings have exhaled. When we exhale, we give back to the world what we no longer need. This continuous exchange reminds us that we are not separate, but part of a larger fabric. Mindfulness invites us to be aware of this interdependence and to live with humility and respect for ourselves, others, and the planet. When the mind is calm and centered, life takes on new meaning. Habitual worries fade, and we can see more clearly what truly matters. Stress and anxiety don't disappear immediately, but at least they no longer dominate our experience. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can respond from a place of calm and wisdom. This transforms not only our relationship with ourselves, but also with our environment and the people around us. Living mindfully is ultimately an act of love for life. Chapter 5. The Master and the Thief, True Generosity. In a small village, long ago, lived a Zen master renowned for his wisdom and serenity. His humility was as profound as his knowledge, and his simple life reflected the very essence of the spiritual path he had chosen. He possessed no great material wealth, but radiated an inner richness that attracted many seeking answers and solace amid the chaos of the world. His home was a refuge where anyone could find a space for reflection, learning, and peace. One night, while the master was sleeping, a thief decided to break into his humble home with the intention of stealing what little was there. Stealthily, the thief searched for valuables, but found very little that could be considered treasure. However, what he did find was the master, sitting serenely in his room, as if he knew exactly what was going on. The thief, surprised by the master's calmness, felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. At that moment, the master didn't react with anger or violence. Instead, he slowly stood up, looked the thief in the eye, and said in a calm voice, "Why are you coming to my house tonight?" The thief, puzzled by the master's serenity and lack of judgment, answered honestly, "I've come to steal because I need what you have, and I don't know how to get it any other way." The master nodded understandingly and, without a reproachful gesture, offered him a cup of tea. What happened that night wasn't just an encounter between two people with opposing roles, but a profound lesson about true generosity. The story of the master and the thief invites us to reflect on what it means to give and receive, and how generosity transcends external actions to become an expression of the heart. Generosity, in the deepest sense of Zen and Buddhism, is not limited to the giving of material goods or favors. It is an attitude born from the recognition of the interconnectedness of all beings and the understanding that what we give actually returns to us in unexpected ways. It is not an act of sacrifice or loss, but a natural manifestation of inner abundance. When we give with true selflessness, without expecting anything in return, we open a space where life flows freely and joy multiplies. In modern society, generosity is often measured by the quantity or value of what is given. However, Zen invites us to look beyond appearances and discover that true generosity lies in the quality of the act and the intention with which it is performed. A simple gesture, a kind word, or attentive listening can be gifts of incalculable value. The master in our story had no material riches to offer, but he did have a full presence, an open attitude, and a heart willing to understand and accept. This teaching challenges us to rethink our ideas about generosity. It's not about giving out of excess or obligation, but about giving from the center of our being, from our connection with others. In this act of giving, we cease to be the exclusive owners of our resources and become part of a larger flow, where the well-being of one is intertwined with the well-being of all. Thus, generosity becomes a spiritual practice that transforms not only the recipient, but also the giver. The encounter between the master and the thief also speaks to the power of compassion and forgiveness. The master didn't judge or condemn the thief for his intentions. Instead, he offered him understanding and an opportunity to change. This gesture not only diffused the tension of the moment but also opened a door to transformation. Compassion, which is a fundamental pillar of Buddhism, invites us to see beyond superficial actions and recognize the suffering that may lie behind them. By practicing generosity with compassion, we create a space where judgment dissolves and common humanity is revealed. The thief, touched by the master's attitude, was able to recognize within himself a different possibility, a life that need not be marked by fear or constant need. True generosity, therefore, is also an act of liberation, a gift we offer both to others and to ourselves. In our daily lives, we can bring this teaching to every interaction. Generosity can manifest itself in patience with a coworker, in the willingness to help a neighbor, in the sincere gift of our time to those we love. The magnitude of the gesture isn't important, but the presence and intention with which we make it matters. In doing so, we cultivate a generous heart that finds joy in giving, without expecting reward or recognition. Furthermore, this practice helps us release attachments and expectations that often cause us suffering. When we give out of a desire to receive something in return, our actions become a trap that limits the soul's freedom. On the other hand, when we give simply because it arises naturally from our being, we experience a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Generosity becomes a path to inner freedom. The master and the thief also teaches us that true wealth lies not in what we possess, but in how we live and share what we are. In a world where material accumulation is often seen as synonymous with success, this story reminds us that true treasure lies in the ability to open our hearts and offer the best of ourselves, without reservation or fear. This silent and humble generosity is what transforms and heals. Throughout the day, we can pause to reflect on our own actions. How much do we give sincerely and how much with the expectation of receiving? Are we open to the possibility of being generous even when we don't have much to offer? Can we see others not as competitors or threats, but as human beings with whom we share a common path? These questions invite us to deepen our practice of generosity and discover within it a path to compassion and wisdom. Finally, the story of the teacher and the thief reminds us that every encounter is an opportunity to practice generosity and compassion. We don't need to wait for great resources or ideal circumstances to be generous. We can start now, right here, with what we have: a smile, a kind word, a gesture of support. In that small, everyday giving lies the power to transform our lives and the world around us. So, I invite you to observe your own life with attentive eyes and an open heart. Look for opportunities to be generous not only in material things, but in the quality of your presence and the sincerity of your intention. Practice compassion toward yourself and others, remembering that in this simple and profound act lies the true meaning of the spiritual path. True generosity lies not in the amount we give, but in the authenticity with which we do so. Chapter 6. The Koan of Silence, the answer that is not said. At the heart of Zen, beyond words, doctrines, and forms, lies a profound teaching that can only be understood in silence. This teaching is the very essence of what Zen seeks to convey. It is not something that can be explained through discourse or reasoning, but must be experienced directly. And this experience often presents itself in the form of a koan, those small paradoxes or questions without logical answers that Zen masters use to lead their disciples beyond the conceptual mind and toward an intuitive and direct understanding. A koan is not an ordinary riddle, it is a door to awakening, an invitation to break the chains of dualistic thinking and discover reality as it is, unfiltered by words and labels. In this chapter, we will explore one of the deepest and most enigmatic koans, the koan of silence. This koan confronts us with the question of what the true answer is when the answer is not spoken, when the meaning is beyond any verbal expression. Imagine a disciple who approaches his Zen master and persistently asks, "What is the essence of Zen?" The master, instead of responding with an explanation or a teaching, remains silent. He says nothing. The disciple feels frustrated and confused, waiting for some word to guide him. Yet that silence is itself the deepest answer, the call to abandon words and open oneself to direct experience. This koan challenges us to go beyond the constant need for explanation, to stop searching in language for what can only be known in silence. Silence is not absence, but full presence, the purest expression of being that is not fragmented into concepts. It is the space where things are as they are, without interpretation or judgment. To understand the power of the koan of silence, it is essential to understand how the human mind tends to work. Our minds are accustomed to conceptualizing, analyzing, comparing, and verbalizing everything we experience. This constant activity is necessary for navigating the everyday world, but when it comes to ultimate truth, the conceptual mind becomes an obstacle. Words and ideas cannot capture the essence of reality, which is dynamic, interconnected, and beyond any definition. The silence of the master is a call to let go of that attachment to words, to explanation, to the search for certainties through language. It is an invitation to experience reality without intermediaries, to open oneself to the truth that resides in the here and now. In this silence, the disciple is forced to look within themselves, to stop the mental chatter, and to discover a space of calm and clarity. This space of silence is also a space of freedom. There are no judgments, no comparisons, no expectations, only the simple and pure presence of being. The koan of silence shows us that the true answer is not found in the discursive mind, but in that state of direct awareness, without intermediaries. The practice of silence in Zen doesn't simply mean maintaining external silence, but rather cultivating an inner silence that allows for deep listening. Listening without prejudice, without interrupting thoughts, without distorting emotions. In this inner silence, the mind clears and opens to a broader, clearer perception. Throughout the history of Zen, many masters have used silence as a powerful tool to transmit teachings. Silence can be more eloquent than any words, more incisive than any argument. In a world saturated with information and noise, silence is a revolutionary act, a gesture of profound wisdom. In everyday life, we can experience the transformative power of the koan of silence by learning to be present without the need to fill every space with words or distractions. The silent mind is not an empty mind, but a clear and receptive mind, capable of perceiving reality in its fullness. The practice of silence helps us cultivate patience, humility, and openness, essential qualities on the spiritual path. Furthermore, the koan of silence teaches us that it's not always necessary to respond to everything, that sometimes the true answer is no answer at all. In our current culture, dominated by haste and overcommunication, this teaching is especially valuable. Learning to embrace silence, to value its depth, is a step toward wisdom. When the disciple learns to inhabit this silence, his understanding is transformed. He no longer seeks truth outside himself, nor in the words of the master, but in direct experience. He discovers that the essence of Zen cannot be captured or explained, but lived. And in this living, in this being fully present, he finds the freedom and peace he so longed for. The koan of silence, then, is an invitation to let go of control, to abandon the need to understand everything rationally, and to trust in the direct experience of the present moment. It calls us to open a space within ourselves where reality can manifest unhindered, undistorted by the distortions of thought. This teaching also has a profound echo in the practice of meditation. When we meditate, we seek to quiet the mind and find that inner silence where truth is revealed. It is not a dead or cold silence, but a silence full of life and presence. In that state, everything is clear and everything is calm. Therefore, when faced with the koan of silence, we should not try to solve it with the habitual mind, but rather surrender to its mystery. We should accept that some questions have no conventional answers, and that true wisdom lies in living the mystery without trying to master it. In this chapter, we explored the profound meaning of the koan of silence, that unspoken response that speaks volumes. I invite you to take this teaching with you, to practice silence not only as the absence of words, but as full presence. Observe your mind, your thoughts, and your words, and find in silence a refuge and a source of wisdom. Silence is not a void, but the space where the self manifests in its most authentic form. Cultivating this silence is cultivating the very essence of Zen. Thus, every moment becomes an opportunity to listen without words, to respond without speaking, to simply be here and now. This chapter, which only begins to unravel the mystery of the koan of silence, is an open invitation to a profound practice that can transform your life, your way of seeing the world, and your relationship with yourself and others. In silence lies the unspoken answer, and in that answer lies freedom. Chapter 7. Letting Go of Suffering, Buddha's Teachings on Attachment. On the spiritual path, one of the most profound and transformative lessons the Buddha taught us is the understanding of suffering and its origins in attachment. This teaching is not just a philosophical reflection, but a roadmap for freeing ourselves from the pain that binds and limits us, and for recovering the authentic freedom that comes from letting go. For those who have experienced suffering in any of its forms, be it loss, frustration, fear, or anxiety, this teaching is a light in the darkness, a path to inner peace. The Buddha understood with profound clarity that suffering is not an inevitable consequence of life, but the result of our own attitudes and mental patterns. At the heart of that suffering is attachment, the human tendency to cling to people, things, ideas, or experiences in the hope of finding security, happiness, or identity. This attachment, born of desire and the fear of loss, generates a constant cycle of dissatisfaction and pain. To understand this truth, it's helpful to recall one of the Buddha's most well-known teachings, the Four Noble Truths. The first tells us that life involves suffering, dukkha. This doesn't mean that life is merely painful, but rather that there is an inherent dissatisfaction, a constant impermanence that makes nothing completely stable or lasting. The second truth points out that the cause of suffering is attachment, tanha, that compulsive desire that binds us to things and makes us resist the natural change of life. The third truth opens the door to hope, suffering can end. And the fourth offers us the path to achieving that cessation, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, a set of practices and attitudes that guide the mind toward liberation. But how do we let go of this attachment that hurts us so much? How do we free ourselves from this constant need to control and possess? These questions are at the heart of Buddhist practice and, at the same time, a challenge for each of us in our daily lives. Attachment manifests itself not only in material things, but also in our ideas, our relationships, and, especially, in our self-image. We cling to the identity we've constructed, the roles we play, and the expectations we have about life. When these things change or disappear, we experience suffering because we believe we've lost something essential. The Buddha's teaching invites us to look at these bonds with honesty and compassion. It's not about renouncing life or becoming indifferent or cold, but rather about recognizing the transitory nature of everything around us and, from that understanding, cultivating an attitude of detachment. Detachment doesn't mean indifference, but a profound freedom that allows us to love and enjoy without fear of loss. In practice, letting go of attachment begins by observing our mind and emotions without identifying with them. When desire or fear arises, we can acknowledge it without being swept away, like someone watching a cloud pass by in the sky. This mindful awareness allows us to deactivate the automatic mechanism of attachment and open a space where peace can manifest. The Buddha taught that attachment arises from ignorance, not understanding the true nature of reality. By deepening our meditation and reflection, we discover that everything is impermanent, that everything is constantly changing, and that trying to hold on to anything is fighting against the natural flow of life. This understanding is liberating because it allows us to accept change and loss without resistance. One of the most powerful images for understanding this teaching is that of the river. Imagine you're standing on the bank of a fast-flowing river. If you try to grab the water with your hands, it runs away and you get wet. But if you simply observe the river, you realize that the water flows, changes, and continues on its course. There's no point in clinging to something that is constantly moving and transforming. Likewise, our experiences, emotions, and relationships are constantly changing. Letting go of attachment means accepting this flow and finding it a source of renewal rather than suffering. Attachment is also linked to the illusion of control. We want to control what happens to us, the people we love, and the circumstances of life, but this illusion only increases our suffering. When we learn to let go of this need to control, we open the door to serenity and trust in the wisdom of life's own flow. In this practice, compassion plays a fundamental role. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning or becoming insensitive, but rather opening the heart to reality as it is, with acceptance and love. We can let go with tenderness, without abandoning our commitment to life, but rather from an attitude of openness that neither clings nor resists. The Buddha taught that suffering ends when the mind is freed from attachment and ignorance. This liberation is not something external, but an inner awakening, a profound transformation that changes our way of being in the world. Meditation is an essential tool for this transformation. Through meditation, we learn to observe our emotions and thoughts without identifying with them. We realize that we are more than our momentary experiences, that there is a space of consciousness beyond suffering. In this space, we can cultivate qualities such as patience, equanimity, and profound joy that are independent of external circumstances. These qualities sustain us on the path of letting go and freeing ourselves from suffering. Furthermore, the practice of mindfulness helps us live in the present with acceptance and without judgment. Instead of resisting what happens, we learn to embrace each moment, even the difficult ones, with an attitude of curiosity and compassion. This chapter is an invitation to honestly examine the chains of attachment that bind us and to take steps toward freedom. It's not an easy or quick process, but it is possible and transformative. As we progress along this path, we discover that letting go isn't about losing, but about gaining a fuller, more authentic life. Letting go of attachment means opening to life as it is, without fear, with trust and love. By practicing these teachings, we can find a place of inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances, but is born of deep understanding and an open heart. I invite you to take this teaching with you, to observe your attachments with gentleness, and to practice detachment as an act of love for yourself and for life. In this practice lies the key to letting go of suffering and living with freedom and joy. Chapter 8. The Tiger, the Strawberry, and the Now, a Zen Tale of Presence. In the vastness of life, the only reality we truly possess is the present moment. This now, as ephemeral as it is eternal, is the only space where life happens and where true freedom resides. However, our minds often live trapped between the past and the future, in memories or worries, missing the only moment that truly exists, the now. In Zen, the practice of presence is the key to awakening and living fully, and in this chapter, I invite you to explore this teaching through a simple yet wisdom-filled tale, the tiger, the strawberry, and the now. The story goes that a man was walking along a path in the middle of a forest when, suddenly, he heard the sound of loud, rapid footsteps behind him. When he turned around, he saw a huge tiger chasing him ferociously. The man's heart began to pound, fear gripped him completely, and his only option was to run with all his might for his life. The man ran without looking back, dodging branches, jumping over roots and stones, while he felt the tiger's fiery breath getting closer and closer. In his desperate race, he reached the edge of a cliff and, unable to go any further, grabbed a branch hanging from the cliff to avoid falling. The tiger roared high above, on the edge, patiently waiting for its moment. As the man hung there, gasping for air and feeling like his life was hanging by a thread, he looked down and saw a bush with juicy, red strawberries, glistening in the sun. Tired and afraid, the man decided to pick a strawberry and bring it to his mouth. In that moment, for the first time in all the anguish of the chase, his mind stopped for a moment, and he could savor the sweet taste of the strawberry with complete awareness. This short story, though simple, contains a profound lesson about presence, the now, and the ability to pause in the midst of the storm to connect with life in its most direct and pure expression. Presence is that state in which the mind is not scattered by thoughts or worries, but completely open and aware of the moment in which we live. It is the ability to be fully attentive to what is happening, without judging, anticipating, or remembering, simply experiencing what is. The man in the story could have been immersed in fear, despair, or anxiety, but in that instant, as he tasted the strawberry, his mind anchored itself in the now. The sweetness of the fruit, the texture in his mouth, the smell and color became his entire world. In that simple act, he found a refuge of calm and clarity. In Zen, this practice of presence is called mindfulness or full attention, and it is the heart of meditation. Cultivating this ability helps us free ourselves from the suffering caused by the wandering mind, which constantly clings to the past or rushes to the future. It allows us to find a space of peace where life reveals itself in all its richness and depth. The tiger metaphor represents fear, urgency, and threat, while the strawberry symbolizes the beauty, sweetness, and life that exists in every moment, despite difficulties. The now is the point where these opposites meet, the space where consciousness can observe without being dragged down by them. When we are truly present, we can acknowledge fear without being consumed by it, we can experience pleasure without clinging, and we can accept life in all its facets without resistance. Presence doesn't eliminate problems, but it changes our relationship with them. Furthermore, this practice has a profound impact on our mental and emotional health. Numerous modern studies on mindfulness confirm that living mindfully reduces stress, improves concentration, and increases overall well-being. But beyond these practical benefits, presence connects us to the very essence of life. In nature, presence is the way things exist. A river flows without clinging to its waters, a tree opens itself to the sun without fear, and a bird sings without worrying about tomorrow. The human mind, on the other hand, is often trapped in an internal dialogue that distances us from this simple and beautiful reality. Returning to the story, we can imagine that, after tasting the strawberry, the man found the strength to climb the branch, escape the tiger, and continue on his way. But the true transformation occurred in that moment of full presence, where life was experienced in its entirety. This story invites us to practice mindfulness in our daily lives. We don't have to wait for extreme situations to connect with the now. Every breath, every step, every moment offers the opportunity to pause and become fully aware. When we begin to practice presence, we may notice how easily our mind wanders, how it becomes entangled in thoughts about the past or the future. But with patience and perseverance, we learn to bring our attention back to the present moment, like someone gently guiding a distracted child. This practice helps us live more authentically, respond to circumstances with clarity and serenity, and find joy in the little things. It frees us from the burden of regret and anxiety and opens us to life as it is, with its shadows and lights. The tiger and the strawberry, in their contrast, teach us that life can be challenging and beautiful at the same time, and that the key lies in our ability to be here and now. Presence is that everyday miracle that transforms experience and invites us to live fully. As we deepen this practice, we discover that the now is not an isolated instant, but a continuous flow of life that sustains and renews us. Every moment is an opportunity to awaken, to connect with reality without filters, to experience the freedom that comes from letting go of the chains of the past and the future. This chapter is an invitation to explore this dimension of life with curiosity and openness. To pay attention to our breathing, to the sounds, to the sensations in our bodies, to the colors and shapes that surround us. To make the now our home, our refuge, and our path. The Zen teaching on presence is simple in its formulation, yet profound in its scope. It's not about escaping life or avoiding difficulties, but rather about inhabiting each moment with total attention and surrender, allowing life to touch and transform us. I invite you to carry this teaching with you, to remember the story of the tiger and the strawberry when you feel your mind wandering or fear paralyzing you. Remember that there is always an opportunity to return to the present, to savor the sweetness of life in the midst of any circumstance. Practicing presence opens the door to inner freedom, to a more conscious, fulfilling, and authentic life. In every moment lies the power to awaken and the possibility of living with serenity and joy. Thus, the tiger, the strawberry, and the now become living symbols of a teaching that can transform not only our minds, but our entire being. Chapter 9. The Noble Art of Observing Without Judging. Throughout history, great spiritual masters have pointed out that one of the greatest obstacles to achieving inner peace is not pain itself, nor external circumstances, but how we interpret them. And, more specifically, the constant judgment our mind makes about everything it perceives. This tendency to label every experience as good or bad, right or wrong, desirable or undesirable, creates a barrier that separates us from reality as it is. In this chapter, we will dive into a profound and transformative practice that Zen and Buddhism have taught for centuries, the art of observing without judging. Observing without judgment is more than a meditative technique. It's a way of being in the world. It's the ability to see clearly, without the filter of our opinions, the cloud of our preferences, or the weight of our conditioning. It's not about suppressing what we feel, but about learning to look with an open mind and a receptive heart. To understand the depth of this practice, let's begin by observing how our everyday mind works. From the moment we wake up in the morning, we begin to make automatic judgments about everything around us. If it's cold, we consider it unpleasant. If it's raining, we think it's a bad day. If someone doesn't respond as we expected, we label that action as negative. This process happens so quickly and subtly that we are rarely aware of it. But each of these judgments, however small they may seem, are like bricks we accumulate, eventually building walls between us and life. They distance us from direct experience, from the simplicity of living without the burden of classifying everything. In Zen, it is taught that when we observe without judgment, we access a form of wisdom that is not intellectual, but intuitive. It is as if, by ceasing to intervene with our critical mind, reality reveals itself as it really is, in all its complexity, beauty, and depth. This attitude of pure observation also frees us from much suffering. Think for a moment about a difficult emotion, such as sadness or anger. When these emotions arise, it's common for us not only to feel them, but also to judge them. I shouldn't be sad, this is wrong, this means something is wrong with me. This additional judgment amplifies the suffering, as if we were adding fuel to the fire. Observing without judging, on the other hand, allows us to see that emotion is simply an energy that arises and passes, like a cloud in the sky. By not resisting it, by not adding layers of thought to it, the emotion can be fulfilled, expressed, and eventually disappear, like any natural phenomenon. To train this attitude, meditation is a powerful tool. By sitting in silence, we simply observe thoughts, sensations, emotions, without clinging to them or rejecting them. It's not an easy task, because the mind is so accustomed to judging everything. But little by little, with practice and patience, we learn to let judgments pass like leaves floating in a river. The key lies in the moment we realize we've made a judgment. Instead of criticizing ourselves for doing so, we simply notice it and return to observing. This gesture of returning, again and again, without violence, is in itself an act of compassion and awareness. Observing without judgment doesn't mean being indifferent or passive toward life. It's not about resignation or inaction. Rather, it's about acting from a place of clarity, without the distortion of automatic judgment. When we see with clear eyes, our actions are wiser, more just, and more in tune with reality. This practice also transforms our relationships. We often judge others by their behavior, their appearance, or their words. And these judgments create distance, conflict, and suffering. But if we are able to look at others with an open mind, recognizing that each person has their own story, their own wounds, and their own journey, then judgment turns into understanding, and separation into connection. A Zen master once said, "Look at everything as if it were the first time you saw it. Look at everyone as if it were the last time you saw them." This kind of fresh, non-judgmental gaze is a gateway to compassion and wisdom. At this point, you might be asking yourself, is it possible to live completely without judgment? And the answer is that, although we may not be able to completely eliminate judgments, because they are part of our conditioned mind, we can stop blindly believing them. We can learn to observe judgment itself, notice how it arises, how it affects us, and how we can let go of it. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting in a park, watching people walk by. Some seem nice to you, others not so much. Some dress in a way you approve of, others you don't. Each of these impressions is born in your mind as a reflection of your beliefs, your upbringing, your experiences. But if instead of clinging to those opinions, you decide to simply observe them and let them go, you begin to experience a form of freedom that doesn't depend on changing anything or anyone. This freedom is the essence of the inner path. It is the freedom to not be trapped in the habit of categorizing everything. It is the possibility of living each experience without being conditioned by the past or the expectations of the future. At the heart of this practice is acceptance. Not a passive acceptance, but an active acceptance of what is. It means recognizing reality as it presents itself, without sugarcoating or distorting it. From this recognition, from this direct contact with what is, a wisdom emerges that guides our actions more harmoniously. And it's important to remember that observing without judgment is not an end in itself. It's a door. A door to a broader consciousness, to a deeper understanding of life. As we cross that door, we discover that we are not just our thoughts, our emotions, or our opinions. We are the space in which all of that happens. We are the observing consciousness. This discovery radically changes our relationship with ourselves. We stop constantly judging ourselves. We stop comparing ourselves, demanding perfection, punishing ourselves for our mistakes. We begin to treat ourselves with more tenderness, with more humanity. And this inner transformation is also reflected in how we treat others. The noble art of observing without judging is, in reality, a form of love. A love that sees without needing to change, that understands without needing to control. A love born of full presence and an open mind. In Zen monasteries, this practice is cultivated not only in meditation, but in every daily gesture. Eating, sweeping, walking, serving tea, everything can become an opportunity to observe without judgment. To be present, attentive, and open to life as it is. And you too can bring this practice into your daily life. When you wake up in the morning, before making a judgment about how you feel, simply observe your body, your breathing, your internal state. When interacting with others, notice the thoughts that arise, but don't identify with them. When faced with a difficulty, observe your reactions, without trying to change them immediately. This form of mindfulness will allow you to respond, rather than react. Over time, you'll notice how life becomes lighter, clearer, deeper. Because by letting go of judgment, you also let go of the burden of having to control everything. You open yourself to the possibility of living from a place of trust, fluidity, and peace. Thus, the noble art of observing without judging becomes a living spiritual practice, a tool for profound transformation. It is an invitation to see with new eyes, to live with a freer heart, to awaken to the truth that life, just as it is already complete. And in the end, as the Zen sages teach, it's not about achieving something new, but about letting go of what prevents us from seeing what has always been here, the mystery, beauty, and stillness of the present moment. Chapter 10. The Rock and the Path, Obstacles as Teachers. On a narrow mountain path, under the dim morning sun, a traveler stops. Before him, a huge boulder blocks the way. There's no way around it, nor does it seem possible to move it easily. The traveler sighs. Perhaps he curses silently, or perhaps he sits contemplating his situation. In that moment, he faces a fundamental choice, to consider the boulder as an interruption in his path, or as part of it. In life, there's no shortage of rocks. Illness, loss, failure, mistakes, disagreements, unexpected crises, all of these appear on our journey like stones that obstruct what we believed was a straight line toward our goals. However, in Zen philosophy and the teachings of Buddha, we are reminded of a different truth: obstacles are not off the path, they are the path. Every difficulty is a hidden opportunity, every rock, a silent teacher inviting us to pause, to look deeper, to transform ourselves. The common mind tends to categorize events as desirable or undesirable, as luck or misfortune. We cling to what we consider positive, and reject what we see as negative. But this division is illusory. Often, what we initially perceive as a calamity reveals itself over time as a blessing in disguise. Conversely, what we believe to be a stroke of luck can turn into a path of suffering if we are not careful. Accepting that obstacles are an integral part of the human journey doesn't mean resignation. Nor does it mean glorifying pain or romanticizing adversity. Rather, it means adopting an attitude of openness, curiosity, and presence in the face of what life brings us. It means asking ourselves, in the face of each difficulty, what is this trying to teach me? How can I grow through this experience? Zen teaches us that what you resist persists. But what you accept is transformed. And this acceptance is not a passive act, but a profoundly active one. It means facing the obstacle head-on and, instead of running away or complaining, recognizing its existence, its message, its purpose. Think back for a moment to a difficult event in your life. Something that once hurt you, challenged you, broke you inside. Now look back at it with the distance of time. Isn't it true that, in many cases, thanks to that moment, you discovered a strength you didn't know you had? Wasn't that pain the beginning of a new understanding, the birth of a wiser part of you? In Buddhist tradition, there is a story about a disciple who came to the Buddha with tears in his eyes. His life was filled with suffering. He had lost his parents, his home had been razed by war, and he felt an unbearable emptiness. The Buddha, with his infinite compassion, listened in silence. When the young man finished speaking, the master told him, "What you feel is real. Pain is part of existence. But if you cling to it, that pain will become suffering. If you observe it, if you let it be, if you move through it with awareness, it will become wisdom." This teaching reveals one of the keys to this chapter. We cannot avoid having rocks in our path, but we can choose how we walk with them. We can stumble, bump into ourselves, and curse, or we can sit beside the rock, look at it carefully, and discover that its rough surface contains hidden inscriptions, messages revealed only to those who know how to look. In the practice of mindfulness, we are invited to become aware of everything that happens, without rejecting anything. When an obstacle appears, be it physical, emotional, or mental, rather than ignoring it, we give it space. We observe it with curiosity, as if it were an unexpected visitor who has come to teach us something. And, in doing so, we often discover that the simple act of observing without judgment begins to dissolve fear, resistance, and confusion. There's an ancient Zen fable that tells how a monk, pursued by a tiger, falls off the edge of a cliff. He manages to grab onto a branch to avoid plummeting into the void. Above, the tiger awaits him. Below, an abyss. As he dangles between life and death, he sees a wild strawberry at his side, bright and juicy. The monk, instead of giving in to panic, takes the strawberry and savors it with gratitude. What does this story teach? That even in the midst of extreme difficulty, beauty can be found. That sometimes, it's on the edge of the abyss that we savor life most intensely. Obstacles don't just stop us. They also reposition us. They force us to look at things from a different angle, to question what we believe to be true, to rethink our priorities. How many times have you heard stories of people who, after a serious illness, financial ruin, or the loss of a loved one, discovered a deeper purpose in their lives? It's as if life, by interrupting its usual course, pulls us out of our inertia and places us on the right path. The Buddha spoke of the middle way, a path of balance between extremes. But this balance is not achieved by avoiding problems, but by walking through them with clarity. It's easy to talk about compassion when everything is going well. It's easy to talk about inner peace when there is no conflict. But it's in the moment of challenge that our practice is truly tested. That's where the obstacle becomes a teacher, because it reveals to us where there is still attachment, where there is still fear, where there is still ego. The rock can take many forms: an unexpected loss, a professional failure, a family conflict, a silent depression. But behind every form, there is a lesson waiting to be discovered. Sometimes, the rock tells us, stop. Other times, it tells us, change direction. And sometimes, it forces us to dig deeper, to go beyond the superficial, to discover what is essential. In the Japanese haiku tradition, the ability to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, the sacred in the everyday, is celebrated. An obstacle can be as simple as a delay, a disagreement, or a minor setback. But if we approach it mindfully, it can become a mirror of our mind. How do we react when something doesn't go as expected? What emotions arise? What stories do we tell ourselves? In this inner exploration, a space for transformation opens up. In Zen, it is said that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and sometimes that teacher is not a human being, but a difficult circumstance. We don't always recognize it at first. In fact, we often reject it. But over time, we understand that what seemed like a punishment was, in fact, a blessing in disguise. A push to awaken. A call to the present. One of the most powerful teachings of Buddhism is impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing is eternal. Neither pain nor pleasure, neither success nor failure. And when we deeply understand this, we stop fighting life. We accept that rocks appear, and also disappear. That paths close, and then open elsewhere. That the only constant is change. From this perspective, even pain becomes manageable. Even uncertainty becomes a companion. Even loss becomes a rite of passage towards something deeper. Not because we minimize suffering, but because we embrace it with awareness. And in doing so, we discover that within pain, there is also light. Within chaos, there is also order. Within rock, there is gold. In Zen practice, the goal isn't to eliminate obstacles, but to understand them. And often, that understanding comes not from thinking more, but from feeling more. From being present with what is, without escaping. From reaching the bottom of the well, and discovering that there, too, is silence, stillness, presence. So, every time you encounter a rock in your path, remember this: you are not being punished. You are being called. You are not being stopped. You are being redirected. And that rock, no matter how hard it may seem, can become your greatest ally if you know how to look beyond the form. In the end, what defines our lives is not the obstacles we encounter, but how we choose to navigate them. If we resist them, we become hardened. If we ignore them, we become lost. But if we accept them, if we learn from them, if we walk with humility, then every rock becomes part of our growth. Every stumble, a lesson. Every fall, a seed of wisdom. The path isn't straight. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Sometimes it narrows so much that it seems there's no way out. But it's still the path. And if we walk mindfully, with compassion, and with courage, each step, even the most difficult, brings us closer to ourselves. Chapter 11. The mind is like the sky, thoughts like clouds. Imagine for a moment the sky in its vastest, purest state, stretching as far as the eye can see, silent, open, serene. No matter how many storms rage in it, how many heavy clouds cross it, or how many lightning bolts pierce it for a moment, the sky always remains. It is there, constant, unchanging in its essence, unidentified with whatever passes through it. Such is our mind in its deepest nature, broad, receptive, without fixed form, simply present. And thoughts, no matter how dense, fleeting, or disturbing they may seem, are like passing clouds that arise, change shape, and disappear. This analogy, as simple as it is powerful, has been used for centuries by Zen masters and Buddhist meditators to teach us how to relate differently to the flow of thought. It's not about eliminating thoughts or forcing the mind into an unsustainable state of emptiness. Rather, it's about remembering that we are not our thoughts. That just as the sky is not its clouds, we are not the noise in our heads. This distinction, when deeply understood, opens the door to a completely new experience of consciousness. Since childhood, we've learned to identify with everything that appears in our minds. A thought arises, and we accept it as true. A judgment appears, and we turn it into truth. An emotion passes through us, and we embrace it as if it were our true selves. But the truth is that the mind is constantly generating content, like a tireless factory. Not everything it produces is useful. Not everything is real. And yet, we spend most of our lives lost in that content, as if it were a map of the territory, forgetting that the map is not the path, and that thought is not reality. Training the mind, then, isn't about fighting thoughts or trying to forcefully control them. It consists, above all, in cultivating the ability to observe. To observe without identifying with them. To watch thoughts pass by as if we were watching clouds in the sky. Some are white, light, almost transparent. Others are dark, heavy, threatening. But they all pass. None stay forever. And, more importantly, none truly touch the essence of the sky. At the heart of meditative practice, this metaphor comes alive. When we sit in silence and close our eyes, the first thing we often notice is a never-ending stream of thoughts. We realize how agitated the mind can be. Thoughts from yesterday, worries about tomorrow, comments, judgments, stories, it all appears unbidden. But if instead of fighting it, we simply observe, something extraordinary begins to happen. The mind, when seen clearly, begins to calm itself. Not because we have forced its silence, but because we have stopped feeding it with our identification. Zen has a word for this attitude, shikantaza, which could be translated as just sitting. It's a form of meditation in which you don't pursue any object, you don't try to achieve any state, you don't seek to control the experience. You just be. You sit, breathe, letting whatever arises pass like a cloud. This practice, although it may seem simple, requires enormous trust in the nature of the mind. Trust that if we don't interfere, if we let go of resistance and clinging, clarity arises naturally, like the sky revealed when the fog dissipates. One of the greatest human sufferings comes from taking our thoughts as absolute truths. If the mind says, "I'm not enough," we believe it. If the idea that something terrible is going to happen arises, we feel it as if it's already happening. If the mind relives a painful memory, we immerse ourselves in that emotion as if it were happening all over again. But all this is nothing more than the play of the clouds. The mind projects images, words, emotions, and we, if we're not attentive, get lost in that internal movie, forgetting that we are the screen and not the scene. Zen practice invites us to return, again and again, to direct experience. What is really here, now, beyond thought? What sensation is there in the body? What sound reaches the ears? What form does this moment take when I don't wrap it with stories? In that simple, naked gaze, we begin to discover that life, in its purest form, is far more spacious than the thoughts that describe it. And that even the most stormy thought has no power unless we nourish it with attention and belief. It's not about rejecting the mind. On the contrary, the mind is a wonderful tool. Thanks to it, we can imagine, plan, create, and communicate. But the problem arises when we confuse it with who we are. When we let it take absolute control and direct our lives without supervision. It's as if the sky forgets it's a sky and believes it's a storm. The practice of inner silence, of conscious observation, is a constant reminder that we are more than this incessant flow. That behind every thought lies a silent space that doesn't need to change anything to be at peace. Sometimes, some thoughts seem more persistent, more sticky. They arise strongly and repeat themselves, over and over again. They are often charged with emotion, fear, sadness, guilt, anger. These thoughts shouldn't be fought, but embraced with presence, as if they were dark clouds heralding a necessary rain. Instead of pushing them away, we can say to them internally, "I see you. You are here. You can stay as long as you need." And by doing this, by offering them space and compassion, they begin to transform. Not because we have pushed them away, but because we have understood them. It's important to remember that there is no such thing as a perfect mind. There is no ideal state of mind in which everything is perpetually calm. Even great Zen masters, after decades of practice, still have thoughts. The difference lies in the relationship with those thoughts. They no longer rule the mind. They no longer govern its actions. They arise, and pass away. They are seen, acknowledged, and then released. Like clouds that cross the sky and leave no trace. This inner freedom isn't just poetic. It has a direct impact on our daily lives. When we learn not to identify with every thought, we gain space for choice. We can stop reacting impulsively. We can respond with more wisdom. We can see more clearly what's really happening, instead of getting caught up in automatic interpretations. It's as if the sky clears its clouds, and we can finally see the landscape as it really is. The next time you feel trapped in a worry, anxiety, or judgment, stop for a moment. Close your eyes. Breathe. Observe the thought like someone watching a cloud pass by. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Is it permanent? Who am I without this story? In that small space of reflection, a door to a deeper, freer, more authentic experience can open. As you deepen your practice, something beautiful begins to happen. The mind ceases to be an enemy, it ceases to be a battlefield. It becomes a flowing river, a blooming field, a sky that welcomes everything without clinging to anything. And you, as a conscious presence, recognize yourself as that space that contains, that observes, that allows. There, a peace is born that is independent of external conditions. A peace that doesn't need the clouds to disappear, because it has learned to see through them. Ultimately, this teaching isn't just a metaphor, it's a door to a new way of being in the world. If you can see your thoughts as clouds, then you can walk through life with more lightness. You can ride out storms with the certainty that they too will pass. You can rest in the sky of your being, that immense space that nothing can touch. Because no matter what happens, the sky is still the sky. And you, deep down, are that sky. Chapter 12. Bankei and Original Nature, Nothing to Correct. Imagine for a moment that there is nothing broken in you. Nothing that needs fixing. Nothing to modify, purify, or perfect in order to be at peace. What if everything you feel you should change is nothing more than an illusion born of a confused mind, a mind that has forgotten what it truly is? This idea, which may seem radical, even scandalous to many, was at the heart of the teachings of one of history's most remarkable and, at the same time, most unique Zen masters, Bankei Yotaku, the Japanese sage who proclaimed that all human beings already live in the unborn mind, their true original nature, and that in that mind there is no mistake to be corrected. Bankei was no ordinary teacher. Instead of repeating traditional Zen rituals or demanding years of silent discipline in temples, he taught in everyday language, speaking to peasants, soldiers, children, women, monks, and merchants alike. His message was direct, transparent, almost disarming. You are already enlightened, you are already complete. You don't need to become anyone else. You just need to stop identifying with what you are not. In his youth, Bankei was a tireless seeker. He visited temples, listened to dozens of masters, and devoted himself to a rigorous, almost ascetic practice. But what he sought never fully satisfied him. He always felt something was missing. That enlightenment lay beyond, in some corner he hadn't yet reached. Finally, after years of meditation, fasting, and extreme effort, he became gravely ill. His body no longer responded, and death seemed imminent. It was then, in the midst of that physical and existential crisis, that something broke, or rather, something came loose. Instead of continuing to seek, he gave up. He stopped pursuing. And in that surrender, the unexpected happened. He realized that what he had been seeking for so long was not far away. It had always been present. It was his original mind, free from artifice, unborn, unconditioned. The unborn mind, as I called it, is not a mystical entity or a hidden place. It is simply the pure state of consciousness, free from identification with the thoughts and emotions that arise. It is the silent witness that has always been there, even before you learned your name, before you adopted your fears, your insecurities, your roles. It is not something you achieve, it is something you rediscover when the compulsion to be someone ceases. For Bankei, the problem wasn't the ego, nor thoughts, nor emotions. The only mistake, so to speak, was forgetting who we essentially are. When we believe we are our thoughts, we begin to act out of ignorance. Anger, greed, envy, and judgment arise. Not because these things are our true nature, but because we have lost sight of the serene depths that contain them. And yet, even in the midst of error, the original nature is untainted. It is like the sky, ever present, even if cloudy. Therefore, when someone approached Bankei confessing their errors or seeking methods to purify themselves, he would respond, "Let them pass. Don't feed them. Remember that you are already the unborn mind. There is no need for correction. Just observe." This teaching is not an invitation to indifference or irresponsibility. On the contrary, it is a call to such profound attention that we stop fighting with what appears, and simply recognize it as impermanent. Only when we stop fighting with ourselves do we begin to act from what is most true. Once, a samurai approached Bankei and said, "I have a terrible temper. I get angry easily, and I have made mistakes that haunt me. How can I eliminate this part of me?" Bankei looked at him and calmly replied, "Show me that anger right now. Let me see it." The samurai was silent, confused. "I can't show it now," he said. "It is not present." And Bankei smiled, "Then it does not belong to you. It is not part of your nature. When it arises, just observe it. But don't say, 'I am like this.' Because you are not that. You are the unborn mind, free from anger, free from confusion." This approach may seem simplistic to the modern mind, accustomed to diagnoses, therapies, and endless processes of self-improvement. But what Bankei offers us is not a quick fix, but a radical shift in perspective. He invites us to stop looking outside or in the future for what is already present here and now. To stop building an identity based on the past or the promise of becoming better. Because as long as we continue to believe that we must get somewhere to be at peace, we will postpone that peace again and again. When we truly understand that there is nothing to correct at the root of our being, we begin to live differently. We no longer act from a place of lack, but from a place of fullness. We no longer seek approval, because we no longer doubt our essential worth. We no longer strive to dominate others, because we no longer feel we must protect a fragile ego. This understanding releases an enormous amount of energy that was previously trapped in self-demand, guilt, and the desire to control. Life, from this perspective, is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. Every emotion, every thought, every situation becomes an opportunity to remember the essential, that the original mind, silent and lucid, is always present. It needs no perfection. It needs no achievement. Only presence. Of course, this doesn't mean we don't have habits we can transform, or difficult emotions to process. But true transformation isn't born from rejecting who we are, but from loving understanding. It's not about fixing ourselves like someone repairing a broken machine. It's about seeing with clarity and compassion, and from there, allowing the false to dissolve on its own. Imagine for a moment living a single day without trying to change yourself. Without trying to be more likable, more accomplished, or more pretentious. Just being. Just breathing. Just listening. Living from the unborn mind is like inhabiting an inner home you were never expelled from, even though you thought you were lost. And upon returning to that home, you discover you were never damaged, just confused. Bankei used to repeat over and over again, "There is no difference between you and a Buddha. Only the Buddha does not forget who he is." This simple yet revolutionary phrase reminds us that enlightenment is not a state reserved for a select few, but the natural condition of every human being when they stop identifying with the transitory. There is no need to adorn the mind. There is no need to improve it. Only to not interfere. This teaching, in its depth, also requires courage. Because it confronts us with the truth that there are no excuses. We can no longer blame our past, others, or our personality. If we are already whole, what prevents us from living authentically? Only our habits, our beliefs, our resistances. But even these, when viewed with love and without judgment, dissolve like shadows in the light. To return to the unborn mind is to return to inner silence. That silence is not empty or dull, but vibrant, like a fertile field where anything can flourish. From that silence, we can look at the world with new eyes. No longer as a battlefield where we must defend ourselves, but as a dance of forms that come and go. And we, at the center of it all, as the awareness that observes without attachment, without judgment, without fear. In a world obsessed with constant improvement, with productivity, with image, Bankei reminds us of a forgotten truth, that we already are. That enough is enough. That peace is not found at the end of a process, but in the cessation of the search. That the deepest part of us has never been touched by error. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, "You're not enough, you should be better, something is wrong with you," stop. Breathe. Look inside. Observe the thought like a cloud crossing the sky. Remember, you are not that. You are the sky. You are the unborn mind. Nothing to correct. Chapter 13. Water Meditation, Flowing with What Is. Deep in a mountain forgotten by time, a stream whispers among the stones. Its sound is constant, patient, almost eternal. It doesn't rush, it doesn't stop, it doesn't resist. The water flows. And as it flows, it teaches. Not with words, but with its very presence. Because in its silent humility, in its ability to adapt to everything and resist nothing, water holds one of the greatest teachings of Zen Buddhism, to flow with what is. Since the beginning of Buddhist thought, the metaphor of water has been present as a symbol of the serene mind, of wisdom, of impermanence, and of the profound nature of reality. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, spoke of the river as a perfect image of life, always in motion, impossible to capture, and yet always there. Heraclitus said that no one bathes twice in the same river. Zen goes further and whispers, "Not even you are the same person who bathes." Everything changes. Everything flows. And resisting the flow is, in essence, the source of suffering. But what does it really mean to flow with what is? And how can we apply this teaching amidst the chaos of modern life, where everything seems to demand control, planning, results, and perfection? Flowing with what is doesn't mean resignation or passivity. It's not about allowing abuse, nor remaining silent in the face of injustice, nor remaining immobile in the face of adversity. On the contrary, it's about deeply surrendering to the present moment as it is, without adding the burden of our mental resistance. It means being completely present, even when circumstances aren't as we expected. It means not pushing the river. Not forcing it to go in the direction we want. But observing it, listening to it, learning from it, and letting it carry us. Water meditation, at the heart of Zen, is a practice without a rigid form, without a defined technique. It's more of an attitude, an internal disposition, a sensitivity toward life that reveals itself in every moment. Observing water reminds us how to let go, how to accept, how to yield without surrendering. And when we open ourselves to this learning, something within us begins to soften. The heart becomes more spacious. The mind stops struggling. The body breathes. Imagine for a moment a difficult situation in your life. Something that generates anxiety, frustration, anger. Perhaps a troubled relationship, a loss you haven't been able to let go of, an unfulfilled goal, a betrayal, an illness. Now imagine that situation is a river. You're in the middle of the current, and instead of letting yourself be carried by the water, you're trying to swim against it, to return it to its source. You're exhausted. But not because the river is bad, but because you're resisting it. Now change your image. Visualize that, instead of fighting the current, you let go of your arms, relax your body, and allow the river to carry you. You don't know exactly where, but you trust. You no longer struggle. You no longer cling to how things should be. You simply flow. That is the essence of Zen. The ancient masters said that water has three main virtues: it adapts, it cleanses, and it perseveres. Each of these qualities holds a gem of wisdom that we can incorporate into our daily lives. First, water adapts. No matter the terrain, if it's flat, it meanders. If there's a rock, it circles around it. If it finds a crevice, it enters. It doesn't argue with the form. It doesn't demand that the world change for it. It changes itself without losing its essence. This capacity for adaptation is the basis of emotional intelligence, of compassion, of resilience. How often do we suffer not because of what happens, but because of our insistence that things should be different? We would like people to be the way we want them to be. For plans to go perfectly. For life to adjust to our expectations. And when that doesn't happen, we get frustrated, tense, and angry. But if we look at water, we learn another way of being in the world: flexibility. The humility to adapt without losing ourselves. To yield without giving up. Then, the clean water. Wherever it flows, it carries with it the old, the stagnant, the dead. And in doing so, it makes room for the new. This is also the mind when it allows itself to be traversed by meditation. When it doesn't cling to thoughts as if they were absolute. When it allows emotions to come and go without building a home for them. The constant flow of water is a symbol of letting go, of not burdening itself with the unnecessary. In Zen, this quality is related to fertile emptiness, to the practice of letting go of identities, roles, desires, in order to return to the essential. Just as a stagnant pond rots, a mind that is not renewed hardens. The cleansing of water is not a moral cleansing, but an energetic one. A purification of attachment, of judgment, of the weight of the past. Ultimately, water perseveres. Although it appears weak, over time it can pierce the hardest rock. It doesn't impose itself with violence, but with perseverance. Drop by drop, day after day, it paves the way. This virtue reminds us that true transformation doesn't happen suddenly, but in the small, the invisible, the constant. Sometimes we think we must radically change our lives, achieve great enlightenment, have great revelations. But Zen teaches us that true awakening occurs in the details, in conscious breathing, in the act of mindfully washing dishes, in a kind word, in a pause. Like water, we move forward gently, but without stopping. Water meditation can be practiced literally. Find a river, a stream, a pond, even a small fountain. If you don't have one nearby, simply observe how the water falls from the faucet, how it flows in the shower, how it moves in a glass. Sit in front of the water and observe it without judgment. Listen to its sound. Feel its freshness. Imagine your mind is like it. When a thought appears, let it pass like a floating leaf. When you feel tension, soften it as water does around an obstacle. If an intense emotion arises, don't repress it, but don't hold on to it either. Let it flow. This contemplation, so simple in appearance, has a profound transformative power. In Shobogenzo, Master Dogen wrote that, "The river flows by itself, yet contains the entire universe." This statement, in its apparent paradox, reveals the heart of Zen, that the absolute is expressed in the everyday, that the infinite is contained in the ephemeral, that the sacred is not beyond the world, but in the world as it is. Water doesn't need to say anything to teach. Its form is its wisdom. And when the mind is still, it can listen. In times of uncertainty, of haste, of collective anxiety, the teachings of water are more necessary than ever. We have strayed so far from fluidity that we no longer know how to simply be. We cling to agendas, goals, opinions, identities, as if by letting go we would lose meaning. But the paradox is that only by letting go do we find who we truly are. Only by letting go of struggle does clarity appear. Only by flowing do we find balance. Flowing with what is doesn't mean agreeing with everything or accepting the unacceptable. It means recognizing every experience as part of the journey. Even pain, even loss, even uncertainty. Not as punishments, but as waters to be crossed. And by crossing them with attention and openness, we discover that they too have their beauty, their teaching, their gift. Thus, in water meditation, we don't seek to control life, nor to fully understand it. We simply seek to be present in it. To feel it. To listen to it. And in that act of presence, of surrender, something within us aligns with the flow of the universe. We cease to be a separate drop and recognize ourselves as part of the river. And then there is no longer any struggle. Only life. Only now. Only flow. Chapter 14. The Keyless Door, Zen Stories to Open Your Mind. At the heart of Zen Buddhism, beyond the texts, doctrines, and rituals, lies a particular way of teaching that transcends words. These are stories, simple yet profound tales, that don't seek to provide certain answers, but rather open invisible doors in the mind, inviting us to cross into a territory where conventional thinking loses its hold. These stories are like unlocked doors. They don't need to be forced, they don't require a special key, but rather a willingness to let go of the known and enter the unknown. The human mind is often trapped in its own certainties. It thinks it knows what reality is, how things should be, what the right path is. But the mind that clings to these ideas locks itself in an invisible prison. Zen stories, by their paradoxical and often disconcerting nature, act as keys that allow us to open that door and liberate consciousness. In this chapter, we will explore some of these stories, not to find answers, but to experience the expansion that arises when the mind opens to new perspectives. One of the most fascinating characteristics of these stories is that they seem to lack linear logic. When listening to them, the mind tries to fit them into familiar patterns, but soon finds itself outside its usual maps. And there, in that uncomfortable space, is where learning occurs. Zen doesn't want us to understand with the rational mind, but rather to live the direct experience, to feel the mystery and depth without rushing to label it. Let's start with a classic story, that of the master and his disciple. One day, a disciple came to the Zen master with a question that had been on his mind for weeks. With great reverence, he said, "Master, what must I do to attain enlightenment?" The master, without saying a word, stood up and began sweeping the temple courtyard with his broom. Minutes passed in complete silence, only the sound of the master's sweeping filling the space. Finally, the master stopped, looked at the disciple, and said, "When you sweep the yard, sweep the yard." The disciple frowned, confused, but repeated, "Yes, master, but what does it mean?" The teacher smiled softly and answered, "If you can't be present when the yard is swept, how do you expect to be present when it's lit?" This simple story invites us to reflect on the importance of mindfulness and presence in every action, no matter how small or mundane it may seem. In our constant search for greater truths, we often forget that the path lies in every step we take, in every moment we live. The unlocked door this story opens is the door to direct experience, where the mind is freed from the obsession with the outcome and immersed in the present. Another story, perhaps even more puzzling, is that of the sound of a single hand. A young disciple approached a master and said, "Teacher, I've heard that the sound of two hands clapping is easy to recognize. But what is the sound of one hand clapping?" The master remained silent for a moment, then raised his hand and slowly let it fall. There was no applause, no apparent sound. The disciple insisted again, frustrated. "Teacher, how can I understand something that has no sound?" The teacher, with a mysterious smile, replied, "Listen with your heart, not with your ears." This story, a traditional Zen koan, challenges our logic and invites us to transcend dualistic thinking. It's not about seeking a rational answer, but rather opening the mind to an experience beyond known categories. It is the unlocked door that leads us to inner silence, where sound is not necessary for existence. In Zen, these stories also function as mirrors that reflect our own mental blocks. When a story doesn't fit into our habitual way of thinking, it confronts us with the rigidity of our beliefs. It forces us to question the certainty with which we hold our opinions, our fixed ideas, and invites us into a space of productive doubt, where openness is the first step toward wisdom. A lesser known, but equally powerful, story is that of bamboo and the wind. In a forest, a bamboo tree stood tall and proud. One day, a strong wind began to blow. The bamboo, stiff and defiant, tried to resist the blow. But the wind was too strong, and the bamboo eventually broke. A nearby tree, which was flexible and bent in the wind, watched and said, "True strength is not in resisting the wind, but in learning to bend with it." This story embodies the virtues of humility and adaptability, so essential to Zen practice. Instead of fighting against the current of life, we learn to yield, to move with circumstances without losing our center. The door this story opens is the one that allows us to let go of rigid control and trust in the intelligence of flexibility. As we listen to these stories, something within us may begin to shift. The mind, which usually wants clear, definite answers, is invited to rest in uncertainty. The pressure to understand dissolves, and with it, a space of calm appears. This space is the unlocked door that opens the mind and heart to a vaster, deeper reality. The Zen mind, it is said, is like the sky, ever present, ever expanding, even though the clouds of thoughts come and go. Stories are the clouds that appear in the sky of the mind, and if we don't cling to them, we can see the infinite blue beyond them. The practice is not to identify the mind with stories, but to use them as tools to undo identification. In everyday life, these stories invite us to question our own certainties. For example, what does success mean to you? Happiness? Peace? How do you define right and wrong? Zen, through its stories, challenges these concepts so we discover that reality is more complex, more subtle, and more mysterious than we can comprehend with the rational mind. Another story that illustrates this is that of the moon and the finger. A Zen master pointed at the moon with his finger and said to his disciples, "Don't just stare at the finger, look at the moon." This metaphor reminds us that words, teachings, and stories are only clues, not the truth itself. The risk lies in remaining trapped in words, forms, and concepts, without going beyond them to experience what they truly are. By opening the unlocked door, we allow our minds to break free from the limitations of conventional thinking and access direct, intuitive understanding. This opening is not a leap into the void, but a step toward inner freedom. A rigid mind, which clings to its beliefs, creates walls that separate us from reality. An open mind, on the other hand, is like an unlocked door, inviting, welcoming, and allowing new things to enter. Zen practice is a continual exercise in opening and keeping this door open, so that wisdom and compassion can flow freely. To conclude this chapter, remember that Zen stories are not meant to be understood immediately. Often, their meaning is revealed over time, at different moments in life, when the mind is ready to receive them. The invitation is to listen to them with patience, humility, and a willingness to be surprised. By opening the unlocked door, we begin a journey toward the expansion of consciousness, toward a free and open mind, capable of embracing the complexity and mystery of existence without fear or resistance. In this space, true wisdom begins to flourish. Chapter 15. Accept what comes, let go of what goes. Imagine for a moment sitting beside a rushing river. The water flows without stopping, it's never the same, nor does it stay in the same place. Every moment, a different drop passes before your eyes. That's life, a constant flow, an endless movement that never repeats itself. This simple image contains the essence of a fundamental teaching of Buddhism and Zen, which is actually a guide for your entire life: accept what comes, let go of what goes. This phrase, so simple in appearance, is truly an invitation to delve into the human experience in a new, wiser, and more liberating way. We live in a world where change can be disconcerting, where uncertainty tests us, and where attachment to things, people, ideas, or states of mind causes us to suffer. However, if we learn to accept what comes with openness and let go of what departs without resistance, we open the door to a much more fulfilling and peaceful way of living. This chapter is a deep exploration of that acceptance and conscious surrender, a journey to understand why resisting change is so painful and how letting go of mental rigidity can radically transform our experience of life. The immutable reality of change. Before we can accept something, we must recognize it as it is. In the Buddhist tradition, impermanence, or anicca in Pali, is one of the three hallmarks of existence. Everything is born, grows, changes, and dies. Nothing is permanent, nothing is fixed. This is a universal truth that permeates every moment of our existence. The body changes from the moment we are conceived until we age and cease to exist. Relationships transform or end. Emotional states come and go, happiness alternates with sadness, calm with anxiety. The environment, society, landscapes, and circumstances are also constantly changing. This reality, although inevitable, is something the human mind tends to deny or try to control. Instead of flowing with the flow, we try to build dams and levees to hold back the water. But nature doesn't yield. Resistance to the inevitable generates suffering. Resistance, the root of suffering. Why do we find it so difficult to accept what comes and let go of what goes? The answer lies in attachment, a mental mechanism that seeks to cling to what we consider a source of happiness, security, or identity. From childhood, we learn to protect ourselves by clinging to objects, people, ideas, or situations. This may be necessary to survive in certain circumstances, but when it becomes a rigid way of living, attachment becomes the root of suffering. Attachment manifests not only in external things, but also in thoughts and emotions. We want our ideas, beliefs, and emotions to remain unchanged because we identify ourselves with them. When reality challenges these expectations, frustration, fear, anxiety, and, ultimately, profound suffering arise. For example, when a relationship ends, the mind may cling to the past with nostalgia or pain, resisting accepting change. When we lose a job or an opportunity, we feel fear and rejection. When we grow older, we fear the loss of youth or health. In all these cases, resistance translates into suffering that could be avoided if we could let go with love and acceptance. The art of accepting what comes. Accepting what comes isn't resignation or passivity. It doesn't mean falling into indifference or giving up on acting. It's an active way of being present, of opening the heart and mind to the moment as it is, without trying to change or judge it. This radical acceptance opens a space of freedom. By not fighting reality, we reduce internal conflict. The mind is freed from the weight of denial and constant struggle. From that place, we can see things more clearly, respond with wisdom and calm, and find peace amidst the storms. A fundamental practice for cultivating this acceptance is mindfulness. By bringing awareness to the present moment, without judgment or expectation, we learn to receive each experience with equanimity. For example, when noticing an unpleasant emotion, instead of rejecting or running away from it, we observe it with curiosity and without identifying with it. The emotion comes and goes, like a passing cloud in the sky. Conscious breathing is a powerful anchor for acceptance. By connecting with our breath, we connect with the natural flow of life, in and out, arrival and departure. Breathing mindfully is accepting the rhythm of the moment, just as it is. Letting go, the release of attachment. Accepting what comes cannot be separated from the ability to let go of what is going. Attachment is the root cause of our suffering because it binds us to what is no longer there, to what is changing or disappearing. Letting go is an act of courage and love. Courage to let go of control, to face uncertainty, to abandon what we thought was essential. Love because it recognizes that everything has a cycle and that holding on only causes pain. By letting go, we free our energy and create space for new experiences, people, and opportunities to enter our lives. This act of letting go can be especially difficult when it comes to profound losses, the death of a loved one, the end of a significant relationship, the closing of a life chapter. In these moments, Zen teaches us to accompany the pain without resisting it, to accept sadness and let it flow like a wave that comes and goes. Stories to open your mind and heart. Zen and Buddhist traditions are full of stories that illustrate this wisdom. One of them is the following. A Zen master was sitting with his disciples when a distraught man arrived. He told the master he had lost everything he loved, his family, his job, his health. He felt like his world was falling apart and he didn't know how to move forward. The teacher looked at him and said, "Do you see that river running out there?" "Yes," the man replied. "That river never stops, it's always changing, but it's always there. The water you see now isn't the same as it was a moment ago, nor will it be the same a minute from now. Life is like that, a constant flow. If you try to hold on to the water, you'll get your hands wet and suffer. Learn to let go of the water and welcome it into your heart. Only then will you find peace." This story invites us to recognize that pain and loss are part of the natural flow of life, and that suffering arises when we try to stop the inevitable. By letting go, we open up the possibility of healing and growth. Practices to integrate acceptance and letting go. To truly live this teaching, it's necessary to make it a daily practice. Here are some simple but powerful ways to do so. Daily meditation. spend time sitting in silence, observing your breath and sensations, letting thoughts and emotions come and go without clinging to them. Mindfulness exercises: take conscious breaks throughout the day to notice the present moment, accepting what you are experiencing without judgment. Reflection on impermanence: remember that everything changes, observe the small transformations in nature and in oneself to familiarize oneself with the reality of change. Kind self-talk: when resistance or fear arises, speak to yourself with compassion, remembering that letting go doesn't mean losing, but rather opening space for the new. Farewell rituals: when something ends, create a small symbolic ritual to honor what you experienced and let go with love. The transformative power of acceptance. Accepting what comes and letting go of what goes not only frees us from suffering but also connects us to a deeper dimension of existence. In this space of full acceptance, life reveals its mystery and beauty. The mind quiets, the heart opens, and a sense of peace emerges that is independent of external circumstances. In Zen, this attitude is the basis for enlightenment, awakening to reality as it is, without filters or resistance. It is not a distant state or exclusive to a select few, but a possibility within everyone's reach, here and now. When we accept unconditionally, life ceases to be a struggle and becomes a dance, a harmonious flow with the eternal river of change. Chapter 16. Bamboo and the Wind: Flexibility and Strength in Adversity. In the vast landscape of nature, we often find symbols and teachings that reflect the essential virtues for living with wisdom and serenity. One of the most powerful and elegant is bamboo, that slender, green, and elongated plant that dances to the rhythm of the wind with unparalleled grace. Bamboo does not resist the force of the wind, it does not attempt to stop it or defy it with rigidity. Instead, it bends, adapts, flexes, and often rises stronger again. This image holds a profound lesson for those who walk the path of Zen and life itself. Flexibility is the key to true strength, especially in times of adversity. Rigid resistance, on the other hand, is often the cause of failure and suffering. The paradox of strength and flexibility. Our culture and society often glorify strength as rigidity, control, and dominance. We associate being strong with not giving in, with resisting at all costs, with maintaining an unbreakable facade in the face of difficulties. However, this understanding of strength is an illusion that leads to fracture, exhaustion, and isolation. Bamboo shows us another face of strength, one that combines firmness with adaptability, resilience with fluidity. This is the paradox: to be truly strong, we must learn to be flexible. It's not about being weak or giving up on our values, but about cultivating the ability to adjust to change, to receive impact without breaking, to find space to grow despite the storms. The nature of bamboo: a silent master. Bamboo is a fascinating plant. Its growth can be rapid, and its structure combines lightness with surprising strength. The stems are hollow, allowing them to be flexible and bend without breaking. When a strong storm hits, the bamboo bends, yielding to the wind, moving in a dance that breathes with its surroundings, while more rigid trees can break or fall. This characteristic has inspired not only poets and philosophers, but also warriors and martial artists, who have learned that in combat, rigidity is a weakness, and the ability to flow with circumstances is an invincible strength. The Zen teaching of bamboo and wind. In Zen, bamboo symbolizes the wise and awakened mind. A rigid, closed mind shatters under the pressure of reality. A flexible, open mind can face adversity with serenity and creativity. Imagine life as that unpredictable wind that blows strongly at times and gently at others. Along your path, you will encounter challenges, losses, disappointments, unexpected changes, and difficulties. If you stubbornly resist, the storm can knock you down. If you learn to flow, to bend without breaking, you will find the strength to sustain yourself and continue. Zen practice invites us to observe this dynamic within ourselves. Where are we rigid? In what areas of our lives do we try to control the uncontrollable? What fear prevents us from being flexible and adaptive? Flexibility in the mind and heart. Flexibility isn't just physical, it's a state of mind and heart. It means being open to new ideas, being willing to change your mind, and accepting that you're not always right. It also means accepting our emotions, even the most difficult ones, without rejecting or repressing them. When we cultivate this inner flexibility, we free ourselves from the need to cling to our certainties or our self-image. We recognize that change is a natural part of life, that emotions come and go, and that circumstances fluctuate. This attitude allows us to face adversity with a broader and more compassionate perspective, without falling into victimhood or despair. We become like bamboo, strong and steadfast, yet capable of bending and adapting. Stories that inspire flexibility and strength. Zen and Buddhist traditions are replete with stories that illustrate this teaching. One is the story of a master and his disciple who were walking through a forest when a sudden storm caught them. The tall, rigid trees broke under the force of the wind, while the bamboo bent constantly but remained intact. The master remarked, "Look at the bamboo, young disciple. It doesn't fight the wind, it doesn't try to overcome it. In its humility and flexibility, it finds its strength." Another story tells of a warrior who faced a battle in which his sword broke. Instead of giving up, he adapted, used his intelligence and creativity to continue forward, and ultimately won. Thus, in life, true strength lies not always in the weapons we possess, but in the ability to adapt and remain steadfast in the face of adversity. Practicing flexibility in daily life. How can we cultivate this flexibility and strength that bamboo symbolizes? Here are some practices to integrate this wisdom into our daily lives. Observe your own rigidity, pay attention to the moments when you resist change or reality, and ask yourself what fear or belief is behind it. Conscious breathing exercises. Deep, slow breathing helps relax the body and mind, facilitating a more flexible and calm response to stress. Meditation and movement. Practices such as Tai Chi or yoga teach you to move your body with grace and flexibility, reflecting that state in your mind. Acceptance of the present. Learning to say yes to the present moment, even when it is uncomfortable or unwanted, making room for adaptation. Visualization. Imagine the bamboo bending in the wind and rising again, incorporating that image as an anchor for times of difficulty. The strength that is born from flow. Being flexible doesn't mean being weak or indifferent. On the contrary, true strength emerges when there is no pointless resistance and when our energy is not dispersed in internal struggles. Flowing with life is an act of profound wisdom and courage. It requires trust in oneself and in the ever-changing nature of the world. When bamboo bends, it doesn't lose its essence or its identity. Likewise, we can adapt to circumstances without losing our authenticity or our values. Flexibility allows us to grow, learn, and evolve. Chapter 17. The Clean Mirror, Seeing Reality Without Filters. In everyday life, our perception of the world is fundamental to how we experience reality, the quality of our relationships, and the degree of inner peace we can achieve. However, what we often fail to recognize is that our vision is colored by multiple filters, beliefs, prejudices, emotions, expectations, memories, and fears that act as a veil over reality. This chapter explores the profound Zen teaching that invites us to be like a clean mirror, a mirror that reflects reality as it is, without distortions, without interpretations or judgments, a mirror that simply reflects clearly what is presented to it, without clinging to or rejecting anything. The nature of mental filters. To understand the importance of seeing reality without filters, we must first understand what these filters are that color our experience. In the human mind, thought patterns are constantly operating, shaping how we interpret what happens. These patterns are formed by upbringing, culture, past experiences, and our deep-rooted emotions. For example, two people may witness the same situation but interpret it in radically different ways. One may see criticism as an opportunity to learn, while another may perceive it as a personal attack. This happens because each person has their own set of internal filters that distort perception. These filters affect not only our interpretation, but also our emotions and reactions. When we are unaware of them, we act on automatic beliefs and unexamined emotions, which can lead to suffering, conflict, and misunderstanding. The mirror metaphor. Zen uses the metaphor of a mirror to illustrate what our mind should be like, a mirror that faithfully reflects what is in front of it, without adding or subtracting anything, without distorting the image. This mirror doesn't judge, doesn't cling, doesn't reject. It only reflects. When our mind acts like a clean mirror, we can see reality clearly and accept things as they are, without resisting or clinging to them. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent, but rather we develop an attitude of acceptance and deep understanding that allows us to act wisely. Dirty mirrors, how we distort reality. In contrast to a clean mirror, a dirty mirror reflects blurred, distorted, or incomplete images. This is how our minds feel when they're filled with prejudices, repressed emotions, rigid judgments, and negative patterns. For example, if we are filled with fear or resentment, our minds tend to interpret the actions of others as threats or attacks, even when they are not. If we are trapped in the need for control, we see reality as hostile and dangerous. This constant distortion is the root cause of many of our frustrations, suffering, and internal conflicts. We are not truly facing reality, we are facing our filtered interpretation of it. The practice of cleaning the mirror. Clearing the mental mirror isn't a literal act, but rather a deep and ongoing practice of self-awareness and mindfulness. Zen proposes several paths to achieving this mental clarity. Meditation and mindfulness, by sitting in silence and observing our breathing, sensations, and thoughts, we begin to distinguish between reality and the interpretations our mind adds. With practice, we learn to observe without identifying with each thought or emotion, as if we were an impartial witness. Questioning beliefs, being aware of our beliefs and biases is essential to removing the filters that distort reality. Asking ourselves why we think or feel a certain way opens the door to greater clarity. Accepting the present, a clean mirror reflects what is in front of it, without rejection or attachment. Learning to accept what happens, without wishing it were different, helps us see more clearly. Develop compassion and patience, understanding that everyone, including ourselves, is subject to mental filters fills us with compassion. Patience is necessary because cleaning the mirror is a slow and ongoing process. The impact of seeing reality without filters. When we manage to approach the experience of a clean mirror, life changes profoundly. Mental clarity frees us from impulsive and emotional reactions that cause suffering. We become more capable of responding with serenity, wisdom, and empathy. Relationships improve because we stop misinterpreting others' intentions. Anxiety decreases because we no longer struggle with an imaginary reality. Inner peace grows because we live more in harmony with what is. A story to light the way. In an ancient Zen monastery, a disciple asked his master, "Master, how can I stop suffering from the things that hurt me?" The teacher replied, "Imagine you have a mirror, and every day when you wake up, you have to clean it so that it reflects the world without smudges or dust. What would happen if you didn't clean it? The mirror would show blurred images and would not be able to reflect reality clearly, said the disciple. Exactly, the master replied. That's what your mind is like when you don't practice mindfulness and detachment. It's full of stains that distort the truth. Cleaning the mirror is the practice of observing without judging, accepting without resisting, seeing without interpreting. Only then will you be able to see reality as it is and find peace. The mirror in everyday life. Bringing this teaching into everyday life can transform the way we experience our simplest and most complex experiences. For example, when someone criticizes us, we can ask ourselves, am I viewing this criticism with a clean mirror? Or am I adding filters of pride, fear, or insecurity? By practicing the clear mirror, we can observe criticism, listen to it without reacting automatically, discern whether there is anything valuable to learn, and at the same time, not be disturbed by misinterpretations or overflowing emotions. Another example occurs in times of difficulty, such as loss or illness. Instead of fighting what's happening with despair or denial, we can try to see the situation clearly, acknowledge it, accept it, and thus find the space for serenity and wise action. The humility of the mirror. The mirror is neither good nor bad, it neither judges nor decides. It simply reflects. This humble attitude is a powerful lesson. In our minds, cultivating humility means recognizing that we don't always have the absolute truth, that our perception can be biased, and that we are in a constant learning process. In this way, the clean mirror also represents an open and humble mind, willing to let go of rigid certainties and welcome reality with innocence and freshness. The integration of practice. To integrate a clean mirror into our lives, it's helpful to create daily moments of pause and reflection. For example, before reacting to a situation, stop for a moment and observe what filters are operating. In meditation, observe thoughts and emotions as if they were reflections in a mirror, without clinging to or rejecting them. Practice radical acceptance of the present, remembering that resistance only generates suffering. Cultivate patience with yourself and others, knowing that cleaning the mirror is a journey, not a destination. Chapter 18. Sleep like a monk, inner calm before rest. In modern life, sleep has become a challenge for many. The fast pace, constant stress, worries that pile up at the end of the day, and overexposure to digital stimuli mean the mind doesn't stop when it's time to go to sleep. We find ourselves tossing and turning, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that prevent us from getting that deep, restorative rest we so desperately need. This chapter invites us to delve into Zen teachings on the art of preparing the mind for rest, to sleep with the same calm and serenity a monk experiences at the end of a day of meditation and contemplation. It's not just about closing our eyes, but about cultivating a deep inner calm that allows us to disconnect from the outside world and tune into our own being. The importance of calm before sleeping. Sleep is a vital function for physical, mental, and emotional well-being. But simply getting a few hours of sleep isn't enough. The quality of sleep depends largely on the state of mind in which we go to bed. If our mind is restless, anxious, or overloaded, sleep becomes fragmented, shallow, and we wake up feeling tired. In Zen traditions, the state of mind before bedtime is recognized as key to restful sleep. The practice of mental calm doesn't begin at bedtime, but is the result of consistent discipline throughout the day. However, there are specific rituals and techniques that monks use to achieve this optimal state before sleep, and that anyone can adopt to improve their rest. The natural rhythm and sleep. In the lives of Zen monks, the day is structured around natural cycles and conscious rhythms. Work, meditation, meals, and rest occur in harmony with the body's internal clock and the rhythm of the environment. This alignment with the natural rhythm of day and night ensures that, when sleep time arrives, the mind is naturally prepared for silence and stillness. In our modern lives, on the other hand, we often disrupt these natural rhythms. We expose ourselves to artificial light, consume stimulants, and extend our activities into the early morning, which disrupts our biological clock and affects our ability to mentally disconnect. The practice of mindfulness before sleep. One of the most powerful practices for preparing the mind for sleep is mindfulness. Sitting or lying down in silence, focusing your attention on your breathing, observing how your body relaxes, how each exhalation releases tension, is a way to clear your mind of scattered thoughts. This mindfulness doesn't seek to control or eliminate thoughts, but rather to observe them without getting caught up in them, like passing clouds in the sky. By doing this, the mind begins to slow down, leaving room for calm. At the monastery, at the end of the day, the monks dedicate time to this practice, sitting in silence or walking slowly, concentrating on each movement and each breath, which helps them enter into rest with serenity. Techniques to quiet the mind. In addition to paying attention to your breathing, there are other techniques that help calm your mind before sleeping. Body scan. This involves mentally scanning each part of the body, from head to toe, observing sensations and releasing any tension. This process brings the mind back to the body and dispels abstract worries. Visualizing a tranquil place, imagining a peaceful environment, such as a forest, a garden, or a riverbank, can induce a state of deep relaxation. Repeating mantras or calming phrases. In Buddhist tradition, mentally repeating words like peace, calm, or liberation helps focus the mind. The art of letting go, recognizing that we can't control everything, that worries can wait until tomorrow, and consciously choosing to let them go. The role of the body in rest. Sleep doesn't depend solely on the mind. The body must be in optimal condition to allow for rest. Therefore, Zen also emphasizes the importance of caring for the body as an integral part of the process. Moving mindfully throughout the day, performing gentle exercises, or practices like yoga or Tai Chi, helps release accumulated tension. Eating in moderation and avoiding heavy or stimulating foods at night is another crucial aspect. When going to bed, posture is important. Although monastic traditions often have specific sleeping positions, the key is to find a comfortable position that doesn't cause strain. The mind before falling asleep. A profound Zen teaching tells us that the state of mind just before sleep is a small window that can make the difference between a stormy night and a restful night. If we go to bed with a racing heart, worried thoughts, or ruminating on conflicts, these mental patterns are reproduced during sleep, leading to nightmares or restless sleep. On the contrary, if we are able to cultivate a calm, open, and receptive mind in that moment, a kind of portal of peace is created that accompanies us throughout the night. To achieve this, many monks practice a kind of conscious surrender, a deep letting go that involves accepting the day as it was, without resistance or regret, and opening to the stillness of the present moment. The night as part of the spiritual path. For the Zen monk, rest is not simply a break between daytime activities. It is a sacred stage of the path, an opportunity to integrate the teachings and regenerate body and mind. At night, when all is silent, the true work of spiritual practice continues on a more subtle level. Dreams can be seen as messages from the unconscious or as symbolic expressions that guide the inner process. Thus, sleeping consciously and calmly is also a way of honoring life and respecting the natural cycle of renewal. Breaking the cycle of insomnia. In our society, insomnia is a silent epidemic. Many people suffer from sleepless nights, battling their own minds, feeling frustrated and exhausted. The Zen approach offers us an alternative path. Instead of fighting insomnia, learn to accept wakefulness and not resist it. This paradoxical attitude often dissolves the anxiety that prevents sleep. Practicing deep breathing, sitting calmly in bed or in a chair, and observing your thoughts without judgment can transform your relationship with the night and make it a time of rest, even if you're not lying down. Preparing the environment. The monks also understand the importance of the physical environment in facilitating rest. A clean, tidy, and dimly lit room creates conditions conducive to silence and relaxation. Avoiding loud noises, reducing the use of electronic devices, and creating preparation rituals like lighting a candle or drinking a warm infusion are ways to signal to the body and mind that it's time to let go of the day. Integrate rest into daily practice. Finally, sleeping like a monk is part of a daily practice that isn't limited to the night. It involves bringing conscious attention to each moment, learning to let go, and calming the mind during the day, so that when night falls, rest is natural and deep. Thus, each night becomes a sacred space of renewal and peace, a gift that allows us to wake up each day with greater clarity and energy for the journey ahead. Chapter 19. A Flower in Silence, the Lesson That Is Not Said. In Zen teachings, there is a profound recognition that some truths cannot be expressed in words. There is a silence that transcends language, a knowing that is revealed only when one is willing to stop, observe, and simply be present. This chapter explores the teaching contained in A Silent Flower, a metaphor for that which is unspoken, that which is unexplained, that which is felt and understood beyond thought. The value of silence. In modern culture, silence is often misunderstood or feared. In our daily lives, the lack of words can generate discomfort, a feeling of emptiness, or even fear. We are accustomed to filling every moment with noise, conversations, and distractions. However, for Zen, silence is a sacred space that contains the seeds of wisdom. Silence is not absence, but full presence. It is an open field where ideas, judgments, and worries dissolve and a deeper understanding emerges. When we learn to be silent, we begin to see with a different clarity, to perceive life in its essence, beyond words and concepts. The flower as a symbol of silent teaching. The flower in this metaphor is the teaching that remains unspoken, because it doesn't need to be. Just as a flower doesn't speak, but its beauty, fragrance, and simple existence communicate something essential, the silent teaching is revealed through direct experience. This flower cannot be transported or accurately described. It is lived. It is felt. It is discovered in the present moment. Trying to capture it with the mind, with rational explanations, or with definitions is to lose it. Zen invites us to contemplate the flower in silence, to open our hearts to receive that which cannot be translated into words. The paradox of Zen teaching. One of the best-known paradoxes of Zen is that the deepest teachings are not found in books or in the words of masters, but in the silence between words, in direct experience. The Zen master can say a lot or remain silent. In both cases, true learning arises in the space between what is said and what is unsaid. In this space, the disciple must be attentive, open, and receptive. This requires abandoning the expectation of finding concrete answers and learning to live with uncertainty and mystery. The silent flower is that truth that cannot be forced or captured, it can only be experienced. A story to understand the lesson that is not told. An ancient Zen story tells of a disciple who asked his master, "What is the essence of Zen?" The master remained silent, then held up a flower. He said nothing more. The disciple contemplated the flower attentively, and in that moment, he experienced an awakening. It wasn't through the words, but through the presence, the gesture, and the silence. The flower became the teaching itself. This meeting sums up the essence of the teaching that is not said. It is not in the explanation but in the experience. The silence that reveals. When we allow ourselves to be silent, we stop looking for answers outside ourselves. In stillness, what previously seemed confusing or inaccessible can become clear. The silent flower invites us to discover our original nature, to recognize who we are beyond masks, thoughts, and concepts. Silence is not an empty or passive state, but a dynamic and living one. It is the space where the mind can rest, where the heart can open, and where wisdom emerges effortlessly. Obstacles to inner silence. In today's world, filled with stimuli and demands, finding inner silence isn't easy. External noise, digital distractions, and the fast pace of life make it difficult for the mind to quiet down. Furthermore, the mind itself tends to resist silence because it fears encountering its own shadows, unresolved emotions, or emptiness. Therefore, cultivating patience and self-compassion is essential. Practices to cultivate the flower in silence. Zen offers various practices to approach that teaching that is not said. Sitting meditation, zazen, simply sitting in silence, observing the breath, letting thoughts pass without clinging to them. Mindful walking, walking slowly, paying full attention to each step, to your contact with the ground, to the movement of your body. Nature observation, spending time contemplating a flower, a tree, or the sky, without analyzing, just letting the experience be. Listening in silence, listening to the sound of the wind, the rain, or the silence of a room, without trying to fill the space with ideas. These practices do not seek an external objective, but rather invite us to open ourselves to direct and profound experience. The teaching that transforms. Even if it's not spoken, the teaching that emerges from silence has a transformative power. It connects us with reality as it is, frees us from false beliefs, and leads us to a state of profound acceptance. By contemplating the flower in silence, we stop being trapped in the constant search, in the need to understand everything with our minds. We learn to trust life, to let go of control, and to live with greater simplicity and authenticity. The final invitation of silence. Zen invites us not to fear silence, not to flee from it with distractions or empty words. The true teaching is there, in that quiet space where everything is revealed without being said. A flower in silence is a reminder that the deepest wisdom isn't taught, it's experienced. It's felt in the heart and expressed in life through simple actions, presence, and compassion. Ultimately, understanding the unspoken teaching is awakening to the reality beyond the noise, an awakening that is only achieved when we dare to stop, observe, and open ourselves to the mystery. Chapter 20. Stillness as a path, returning home to oneself. In the human journey, there is a deep, silent longing, the desire to return home. Not to a physical home, but to that inner place where true peace, unwavering calm, and complete acceptance reside. This, returning home, is a return to oneself, to the stillness that has always been there, waiting to be discovered. In this chapter, we will explore stillness as an essential path, as the gateway to rediscovering our purest and truest essence, that which neither moves nor is altered by external circumstances. Stillness is much more than the absence of noise or activity. It is a profound state of being, a vibration that connects us to life in its most authentic form. The search for stillness in a hectic world. We live in fast-paced times, where constant noise, overwhelming information, and the pressure of daily life push our minds and bodies into a state of hyperactivity. Our attention jumps from one stimulus to another, without rest or pause. Contemporary society, with its demands and distractions, seems to create a scenario contrary to stillness. Yet, amidst this turmoil, an ancient invitation emerges, to pause, look within, and recognize that at the center of our being lies a space of calm and serenity. This invitation is not new, it has been at the heart of the spiritual teachings of all profound traditions, and Zen expresses it with singular clarity. Stillness is not passivity. It's important to clarify that stillness, as understood in Zen, is not synonymous with inaction or indifference. It's not an escape from the world or a denial of reality. Rather, it's an active and conscious state of presence. It's the ability to be fully in the moment, without resistance or internal turmoil. When we are still, the mind is not trapped in the past or anxious about the future. It doesn't cling to thoughts, emotions, or desires. It simply is. This simple existence frees us from attachments and opens the door to clearer, broader perception. Coming home, an inner journey. Returning home is a powerful metaphor for the process of rediscovering oneself. Deep down, we've all lost touch with that inner home, with that essential stillness, because we've allowed distractions, fears, and conditioning to distance us. The journey home involves traversing layers of mental noise, fears, limiting beliefs, and learned patterns. It's a descent into the heart of our being, where our unchanging essence resides. This journey is neither linear nor swift. Sometimes it seems like we're going backward or off track, but every step, every attempt to return to stillness is precious. Along this path, patience, compassion, and perseverance become our allies. Stillness as a mirror of being. When we sit in silence, when we allow stillness to settle within us, we begin to discover that it reflects our true nature. Like a calm lake reflecting the sky, stillness reveals the self without distortion or judgment. This state allows for profound insights and intuitive understanding that transcends reason. Stillness is the foundation for any authentic transformation, because in it, the ego loses its hold and authenticity emerges. Practices to cultivate inner stillness. Zen offers simple but powerful tools for cultivating stillness. Zazen, seated meditation, the fundamental practice of Zen. Sitting in a stable posture, observing your breathing, without clinging to thoughts or emotions, letting everything pass without resistance. Mindfulness, bringing mindfulness into everyday activities, such as walking, eating, or washing dishes. Each act is an opportunity to return to the present in stillness. Conscious breathing, breathing anchors the mind. Observing how the air flows in and out, without forcing it, allows us to return to the present moment in calm. Silent retreat, taking time to step back from outside noise and immerse yourself in the practice of silence. This strengthens your connection to inner stillness. The profound benefits of stillness. Beyond momentary peace, stillness transforms the way we relate to the world and to ourselves. From this state, patience, clarity, and compassion are cultivated. Stillness allows us to respond rather than react, to observe without judgment, and to act from a place of wisdom and love. It frees us from the stress, anxiety, and suffering caused by an overactive mind. Obstacles on the path to stillness. Not everything is easy in this process. The mind tends to resist, filling up with thoughts, doubts, or fears. We can feel restless or frustrated when we seek stillness and don't find it. Recognizing these difficulties as a natural part of the path is essential. We shouldn't fight the mind or judge ourselves for not achieving a perfect state. The practice is simply accepting these experiences and continuing to return to stillness again and again. Stillness and connection with the whole. When we delve into stillness, we discover that we are not separate from the world, but deeply connected to everything around us. In this noiseless space, the boundary between self and other dissolves. Stillness reveals an essential unity, an invisible fabric that binds all existence together. From it emerges a profound understanding of impermanence, interdependence, and compassion. Stillness as a refuge and home. Coming home to oneself is finding a refuge that remains constant, even when the external world changes and unrests. This inner stillness is a home to which we can always return, a safe place to rest and renew. This home is not conditioned by anything external, it is always available when we learn to quiet our minds and open our hearts. Stillness, then, is not simply a technique or a temporary state, but a path, a life practice that invites us to shed the superfluous and discover the essence that has never been lost. It is the path to returning home to oneself, to fully inhabit life with serenity, clarity, and love. Closing. Throughout this journey, we have walked together along ancient and wise paths, those paved by Zen and Buddhism to teach us how to live in complete harmony with ourselves and the world around us. Stories, teachings, parables, and meditations that not only seek to calm the restless mind, but also to open the door to a deeper and more authentic experience of existence. What we have explored here goes beyond mere intellectual knowledge. It is an invitation to an inner transformation, to an awakening that arises when we let go of burdens, when we release attachments, when we learn to listen in silence, when we choose compassion and presence over distraction and judgment. Every word, every story, every lesson is a thread woven into the tapestry of our own lives. It's not a distant destination, but a path we can follow every moment, here and now. Stillness, mindfulness, acceptance, and love for what has become tools for living with greater serenity, wisdom, and connection. Perhaps at some point, while listening, you felt a teaching resonate within you, awakening a spark, a dormant seed of peace. That seed, if cultivated with patience and practice, can grow and transform into a refuge on stormy days, an inexhaustible source of strength and serenity. This audiobook doesn't end here. It's just the beginning of a path that unfolds before you, inviting you to continue exploring, to continue living with greater presence, to continue awakening to the deepest and most wonderful reality that resides within you. The essence of Zen and Buddhism reminds us that there is no need to search outside for what is already within, that happiness and peace are not distant goals, but natural states that arise when we stop resisting and simply be. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May calm, wisdom, and compassion always be with you, and may each step you take bring you closer to that stillness, to that inner home that is always available to you. With every breath, with every present moment, you are coming home.